What's up, guys? It's your boy Chadifer, and we're back at it again with another tier list for the patch that Worlds is going to be played on this year. I think it's patch 10.13. And for this patch, we're actually not going to be ranking the characters on how annoying they are. We're going to be ranking the characters on how good they are. And this isn't going to be for like SPL or even specifically ranked. This is going to be more like an in general tier list, which combines how good I feel like each god is on paper, along with how good they actually are in practice. And I'm going to try to not take anyone else's tier list into account. I'm going to get all of this from my own head or from the Smite game. So let's get right into this. And one more thing, boys. You know me for this Smite video today. I'm going to be rocking the Fafnir shirt. Okay, for starters, we have Agni. And yes, Agni does a lot of damage. That's kind of in part due to his passive. However, here's the thing with Agni, is that his abilities aren't the most practical to hit. Flame Wave has a short range, which you don't want to see on a mage. His dash, it's your freaking escape. You don't want to have to use your escape to do damage most of the time. This is just a combo with your other abilities. It adds a little bit of damage. It can do a very, very small amount of damage itself. So this ability doesn't even really count as a damage ability. In fact, this ability is just here to make sure your other abilities' damage doesn't suck with this extra damage, because this extra damage isn't insane. And the biggest part of this ability is that it just adds a stun. This is mainly just to add a stun to your abilities, really. And then you have your Rain of Fire, which, yes, if you hit all three of them, it does a shit ton of damage, like an absolute metric booty ton of damage. However, the thing is with this ability is that I'd rather just have like a burstier ult. Like I'd rather have like a raw ult, a Thoth ult, a Kukulkan ult, a Janus ult, than have to sit there and hit three of these, to have to combo it with my one in order for it to be a stun. And then to top it off, every time you go to use this ability, there's like decent animation times with Agni, I feel like. Like there's true setup to a point where people can actually like dodge your abilities a lot easier because of the amount of setup and freaking animations you have to go through on this character. I mean, for freaking instance, that's really fucking Agni, bro. He has to fucking kneel down and he has to hump the air every time he wants to use his ult. He can't just use his ult, bro. This ain't no Merlin flicker. All that being said, he still does a lot of damage. And the setup isn't that crazy. So you will, he's not the most impractical god to use, but he's probably more impractical than most other gods. And it's little tiny differences and nuances like that can really decide how good a character is. All that being said, we're gonna end up putting Agni in the B tier. All right, so in my opinion, Achilles on paper is like OP as absolute crud. Gift of the Gods, I mean, you can change stances while you're in base. You have one that gives you movement speed, you have and power, and you have one that gives you health and protections, and it scales per level. This is just an amazing passive in my opinion. And you add that onto your 2 Radiant Glory, which every time you're popping this, each time you hit an ability you're healing, you're getting power. You're getting percent power and percent protections and 20% crowd control reduction. This ability is busted as fuck. And execute that can keep continuing, which it does make you take increased damage, but the increased damage, the downside to Fatal Strike is not enough. They did not correctly balance Fatal Strike's downside. Might as well just look at this bitch as you just get to keep executing people in a row. I've seen people get like pentakill executes. I think I've gotten a quadra-kill execute before. So, ult, just insanely good as well. Your 3 is really good for dodging, which is underrated on a good player. Dodging super important in this game. Who cares if it's short range? And this one's decent. So Achilles' his weaknesses are that in lane he gets out cleared by a lot of characters. But Achilles is one of those warriors that just does not fall off late game at all. Achilles late game can be insane with the correct builds. Like Axe is going hard on him right now. I just feel like on paper, Achilles is insane. And in practice, he's still really good. So for Achilles here, we're definitely putting Achilles. For some reason, he's all the way down there. A tier, S tier, boys. He's definitely an A tier character. I don't know who I'm going to be reserving S tier for, though, to be honest. Who should I reserve the S tier for? Okay, so yeah. Who's going to be A tier here? Let's move on. All right, next up we have Muzenkob. Tale as old as time. Mulan doesn't have a leap or a dash or anything. He just has a metric booty footy ton. Movement speed, as you can see, 30% here, and he gets 50% attack speed for free, which is really nice for him because he's an ability hunter, but he's an ability hunter who can get literally 50% attack speed just for free at all times from your hive. Your hive is a really OP ability. It gives you HP 5 too, which is super nice. So as an ability hunter, you can still have a good amount of attack speed. Your 2's good, especially when they buffed it. I think they made this go a little bit faster. Your ult used to be insane, but your ult is probably one of the best parts of Mulan's kit because it hits like an absolute truck. It's a 20% slow. It's a 10% protection reduction, and you get to get the cooldown reduced by like 60% or whatever if you hit it. So it's kind of bloated. The reason why this ult used to be super OP was because the protection reduction used to be a lot higher. It was like 50% at one point, which is broken. At 10%, I feel like this is balanced. They could maybe up it to 50% and it not be OP. But this is a really strong ability. So when people are playing on Mulan, it's mostly just because he's a really strong ability hunter. And they just don't care that he's unsafe, basically. They might be playing him in mid lane even. He's a decent character. However, we can't ignore AMC's weaknesses. But here's one thing to remember is that I'm doing this on paper and how practical they are to use. AMC is really easy to play. His weakness is just that he's not super safe. And that he's not in the meta, because in the meta is not really ability hunters. Ability hunters aren't normally meta. People aren't playing hunters in the mid lane every single game. We are still seeing a lot of mages in the mid lane. So meta-wise, AMC's just not really cooking there, right? However, this is a tier list that is not aiming to take meta into account. I'm going to end up doing it at least a little bit. But because we're not doing it a lot, I'm actually putting AMC in the B tier. But if I was taking meta into account, I just need this to be clarified, AMC would obviously be in the C tier. All right, so now we have Alpoash. Alpoash has been meta in SPL, especially for solo mages in the mid lane. He's been playing solo even back a couple seasons. It kind of confused me though. Like I knew he'd be pretty decent. Like I've done it before, even before it was meta, and I do think it's pretty decent. But it surprised me just how meta Alpoash was. People were even playing him in the mid lane in SPL, and I really do feel like there's just a little bit of that. Man, we don't get to play Alpoash much. He's finally decent. So let's just pretend he's good so that our teammates let us play him more. Because I don't understand the absolute value that Alpoash has. So what, your passive, you walk up your explosions, you get a little bit of a mana heal, cooldown reduction by 1 second. The passive's not insane. And then I feel like the main reason why Alpoash, oh shit, okay. So there's 2 main reasons why Alpoash hasn't been looked at as a super good character for most of his lifetime, at least as far as I know. And that's 1, because he's super unsafe. He doesn't have a dash or any type of movement. And their way of making it up by giving him a little bit extra damage with his full combo and giving him the sustain from his passive, that's not enough. There's some characters that have a lack of mobility where they're able to make up for it. They don't make up for it on Alpoash. And then the other thing, and this one's like more important in my opinion and not really talked about as much, is that Alpoash's abilities are just super impractical. Like you actually have to be pretty dang good at the character to consistently, you know, throw out your 1, throw out your 3, throw out your 1, boom, hit a corpse explosion and get that big burst of damage. A lot of times people are able to get away from that, especially if they're using like Winged Blade or something. And so a lot of times you're not able to hit your full combo on people. Maybe you'll only be able to hit the 3 and then the 2 on them. So yeah, I mean, that's the impracticality of his abilities in my opinion. It's just not the easiest to use. It's one of the more dodgier things in the game. So the big selling point for Alpoash, in my opinion, like in general, like obviously in solo lane, it's that he has some sustain and his abilities are easier to hit and he's got good clear. Easier to hit because of the shorter lane, I'm saying. And because people have to stand in the wave. You know, if you're playing against a warrior, they have to stand in the wave, so it made more sense. But for me, the late game big selling point of Alpoash was his ultimate. Because your ultimate can apply anti-heal. It's like almost as big as a lane. It's huge, and it actually does pretty decent damage. So let's see, max 3 stacks, 20% per stack. So that's if it hits them 3 times, it does 60% anti-heal. So if you buy 1 extra anti-heal item, you can have 100% anti-heal every time you use your ult on Alpoash. Okay, and then the other thing, which is, I thought I remembered this, and so I just read it. Alpoash also has 40% anti-heal. It says it right here. He has 40% anti-heal for 5 seconds on his 1. So Alpoash has just got some of the most anti-heal in his kit out of any character in the game, maybe the most. It's very easy for an Alpoash, especially if you also build an anti-heal item like Divine Ruin, to just apply 100% anti-heal to characters all the time. So for me, he was kind of one of those counter picks where if you're building a team comp that can keep Opwash safe, or just a team comp where you don't think Opwash is going to get farmed and you also want a lot of anti-heal, that's when you would play Opwash. I didn't understand why he became absolute meta. So after saying all that, I think I'm going to have to put Opwash in the... let's see. He also has gotten nerfed recently. I don't think the nerfs were huge for them. It's mostly like he's probably going to be less meta because of a combination of the nerfs and also that being added alongside the buffs to other characters. I'm thinking I'm going to put Opwash B, but I actually think Opwash is closer to C tier than B tier. I do think he was being overrated. In fact, you know what? I just feel like most of the time you don't need the amount of anti-heal Opwash has. I feel like he actually does have a little bit too much anti-heal. And even that being said, there's other characters. There's a character called Cerberus that exists. You know, you got someone like Sobek's anti-heal. Like, I just feel like there's other characters that can have anti-heal, so he's just not super necessary for the amount of impracticality he has, and just the fact that there's better mages to play now, there's better solos to play now. So I'm gonna have to put Opwash C tier, actually. You know, last tier list, I was trying to appease the masses as much as possible. This tier list, I'm aiming to not appease the masses. I'm gonna just go with my freaking brain power here, boys. All right, guys, so we're actually gonna have our first tier list change here. I'm putting Achilles S tier. I don't care. Achilles is S tier. I wanted to put him A tier just because he has the weakness of the early game, but that being said, his early game's not even super weak. Like, he wins a lot of close engages. If you can just trade semi-equally with people, a lot of times you can still win the fight early game. So screw it. And laning phase is not as important as late game or, you know, outside of laning phase. So we're putting Achilles S tier. Okay, so next character here is we're doing Amaterasu now, boys. And Amaterasu is one of those characters where on paper, especially nowadays, like, on paper, this character is OP as fuck, dude. She's OP as fuck. She has an aura on her passive where enemies take 10% extra damage, and all you have to do is hit 3 attacks on the same person in a row or whatever. That's crazy strong. This is crazy strong. It gives you sustain in lane. It gives you attack speed. It gives you movement speed. It gives you bonus power. And guess what? It also is another aura. It gives it to your teammates too. So you can give your teammates 30 extra power along with 10% increased damage. That increases your structure damage by a lot, and that obviously will just help your dive so much. Your 2, when it's charged, hits like a truck. It gives you damage mitigations. Mitigations are some of the strongest stats in this entire game. Now, of course, it's slightly impractical because you do have to charge it. Your 3, slightly impractical because people can body block it. However, it goes a decent amount of range. It doesn't have a long animation. And it's a 1-second silence. Silence is a pretty strong CC when used correctly. And then your ult. To be honest, the practicality of Amaterasu's ult, this is like one of the weakest parts of her kit. Because even though the max potential was you could fucking do a shit ton of damage and stun their whole entire team and slow them for 2 seconds. What really ends up happening on Amaterasu is you do that to one person. Or a lot of times you even do this to 0 people. Because it's pretty escapable in the grand scheme of things. And a lot of times you won't hit, and if you're not hitting all 3, then you're not actually doing a crap ton of damage, so it ends up just being like a lackluster ult a decent amount of times. But yeah, max potential, this ult is also crazy. So on paper in general, her kit is freaking crazy. However, that being said, I know for a fact, I don't think she's very meta. I don't think people are playing her a lot, and for me, that's pretty crazy. I think it's because maybe she's not really good with Axe, and Axe is meta right now. However, there has to be a way to make this character OP. I refuse to believe, like, not enough has changed with this character, because this character was, like, high meta not super long ago, if I remember correctly. And I just don't see enough having changed with this character for her not to be at least an A-tier character. She has to be crazy. Like, she hyper farms. She can hyper farm in lane. She can win lane and get, like, 3 levels ahead of you and just go hammy salami. Maybe I'll play it safe with Amaterasu, though, and I'll put her A-tier. I kind of want to put her S-tier, though. I kind of want to put her S tier, so just for Amaterasu, add a row above. Okay, so as you can see here, I've added A+ tier. We're going to compromise. We're going to put Amaterasu in the A+ tier. I am taking meta and other people's opinions slightly into account here. I did hear somebody say that I think they thought she was S tier recently, but, you know, whatever. A+ tier. I can see it. All right, next up, we have on her another super meta character that I don't 100% understand, because I feel like the sentiment behind on her that he was really good in lane, he's good at 1v1ing, he's one of the best early game hunters, but late game he would fall off, and it's like, yeah, I guess he falls off a little bit, because he doesn't really have a stim in his kit, and his ult starts hitting for pebbles, and it's really just for CC immunity, or maybe your left click gets broken late game. So he falls off a little bit, but he never fell off too much. I thought that a big part of why people didn't play him was just his kit in general wasn't the most practical or good kit. But he's super meta now, and people are thinking he's super good. So let's try to see why that is. Enfeeble is one of the biggest reasons why. Being able to reduce the physical protections by 20 early game is crazy good. Crazy good, especially you can pair him with a one of the mini guardians that also reduce protections. Cerberus, Sylvanus, Horus, things like that. It's absurd. Your pillar impale combo. You know, maybe pros are just really good at hitting their pillar impale combos, or they're just really good at the character. So they can get past the impracticality of this combo that I never hit. And so it makes the character a lot better for them. Makes you do extra damage too. This hits like a truck. They're probably never saving people's lives on accident with the knockback of it like all your teammates are. Is why you're probably seeing it more at a top level. This ability is just good. And this ult early game is, I think this ult is crazy good early game. It's really good for countering CC ults because it's such a long CC immunity duration. It's just late game, I don't think this ult's very good at all. So I do think it's kind of like a high-end type of thing where they can kind of just, their skill just gets past the impracticality of this character, because I do think this character is pretty impractical and does actually fall off a little bit. Late game, maybe they're just, maybe dual lane early games also being more prioritized in this meta. That would make someone like On Her a better pick. Okay, as you can see, I've also added a B+ tier here, and that's because On Her is going in the B+, guys. And that's going to be very surprising. That's going to be very controversial. That is not going to please the masses. However, that's kind of the point of this video, is I wanted to not take into account other people's opinions, and I wanted to put what I truly think, despite what like things that I see in SPL or things that I hear other people say. And just for me, I've never felt personally that On Her is better than B+ tier. If I was going to appease the masses, I put him A or A+, based off of how much play we see and the success that the character sees. But that's not this tier list. Hopefully this makes it more interesting to you guys, for you guys to know that I'm not just kissing butt, or, you know, like, this is actually from my own head. I think On Her is a B+ character. All right, here we are at Anubis, and let's just get this right out of the way. Early game, Anubis is very strong early game. His clear is really good. He does a ton of damage. You won't have enough anti-heal for him. But the thing is, late game, with a lot of anti-heal and proper diving, yes, Anubis still does do more damage than, like, maybe the average mage, but that's mostly just with his ult. Because, like, yes, his 1 and his 3 do have the potential to do absurd damages, but they're tick, so you're not always going to be hitting a lot of that. I think your 1 can get canceled. Your 3, someone could Aegis it, or they could get out of it. So, even though your ult is also tick, too, so, I mean, I guess people can still Aegis it. You know what I mean. Your ult's a fucking laser beam. It does a million damage. You could solo a Titan with his ult. It's crazy. But you're also having to stand in place. People have anti-heal. You're not life-stealing. You're going to die. It's very... Okay, I'm not going to say it's very easy, but it's a lot easier for teams to make Anubis not feel like a character in the late game than a lot of other characters, because that's just how hard you can counter Anubis, because that's how much he relies on lifesteal and tick damage. Tick damage, you can get away from it. You can cancel it. Lifesteal, you can build anti-heal. So yes, Anubis is super strong early game, but late game, he doesn't always cut it. He still does have good objective clear, though. His 2 is a good CC. Okay, with that being said, for me, I'm putting Anubis in the B tier. Now, the reason why Anubis is overall Pwash, because like I said, I completely don't understand why there's a reason to play Pwash. I think there's no reason to play Pwash. I think he's pretty impractical, and he's easy to kill. I think he has just as many weaknesses as Anubis does. However, Anubis, I feel like there's more reason to play him because he's just so busted early game, and I just feel like I feel like he's more practical. His abilities aren't, like, crazy hard to hit and things like that, especially in the lower levels, because I'm going to try to generalize this. I'm not going to try to do it for SPL. I'm not going to try to do it for bronzes. I'm going to try to do it in the middle. And Anubis is one of those characters that can just run lobbies in the lower tier games. So he gets a B tier. Okay, so we're doing Ao Kuang. Ao Kuang in non-conquest modes. He's got all those non-conquest game mode buffs. He's crazy in those modes. You can build him however the fuck you want. You'll probably do good if you're good at him. He has not the most practical kit, because, you know, Dragon Call does a ton of damage, but you have to get close enough in on people and hit them with all of it. Your 1 barely ever hits people. and invisibility is not always something that works, especially against coordinated teams. Only one of them has to see you go invisible, and then all of them know where you're at or that you're coming. This ability is good though. Obviously, an execute's great. His passive's decent. But I do feel like you don't see him a lot at the highest tier. And I mean the highest because I do think in pretty high rank, you'll still see a lot of people stomp with him. But it's like SPL level, you don't see a lot of him. And it's because coordinated teams are just really good with dealing with this character, I think. And a big thing is that his early game is not good. I'm pretty sure his clear is pretty dog compared to most characters. But this character can completely stomp and feel completely broken, especially in lower tier lobbies. So I think I'm going to put Ao Kuang B tier. But that's just to try to generalize it. I mean, if this was like the max potential tier list, he could even be like A+ tier. But yeah, at max potential, like every single one of these characters would be moved up a tier probably. We're going to try to generalize it. We're going to try to think about how most people would be with Ao Kuang in their hands. So this tier list can help most people as best as possible. And we're going to put Ao Kuang B+ tier. But just know if this was for non-conquest, because he's buffed to non-conquest, he'd be like A+. Okay, so here we have Aphrodite. I think I like Aphrodite the most in support, and I still hate Aphrodite in support. I thought Aphrodite's support was OP when they first did those big buffs to her and Hel, but then they nerfed the crap out of her, and then we still saw people in SPL playing her, like Awesome Jake, Polar Bear Mike, and they would lose 90% of the time while playing them, but they would still keep doing it, so obviously the pros still thought this was pretty good. I'm pretty sure Aphrodite support still sees play till this day. I'm an Aphrodite support hater. And because I said that I still think she's best in support, I'm just an Aphrodite hater in general. She's too impractical and too supportive as a mage. Doesn't do enough damage. These abilities aren't the best for doing damage to people. This usually requires you to be getting dove or for somebody else to be diving for you. This is not hitting a lot of times. It's kind of slow. Just not practical, right? Not enough AoE on this ability. It's mostly for the heal. So yeah, her supportive, she's OP. Like her abilities on paper are really strong. It's just that in support, it just, like, it doesn't go, like, it doesn't translate from paper to in-game, right? Just other supports are doing what she does better. Anti-heal exists. You have to use this at perfect times. Even pros aren't always doing that. Yeah, I'm just not the biggest fan of this character. That being said, if you really want a healer, she's probably, like, I mean, there is Hel, too. The thing is there is Hel, and Hel's better in mid. I just feel like Aphrodite does kind of have a place, though. I just feel like she doesn't do her place super well. Like, to be honest, especially in low-tier games, because she's a mage, you would think Aphrodite is, like, really hard to kill. Aphrodite is not that hard to kill just by anti-heal, and she's way easier to kill than most other supports, even if you're still building her, like, mostly defense. So because of that, I kind of want to put Aphrodite in the C tier, but she would be, like, high C tier. I guess I can start doing this. I'll start moving. At this point in the video, I will now start moving the characters, like, in order of how good I think they are. So, like, obviously, On Her is above Ao Kuang. That means I think On Her is better than Ao Kuang. Afro is above All Plosh. That would mean I think Afro is better than All Plosh. But I don't know if I do, to be honest. That one's close. Down here, I think Anubis. I think you gotta go right here with this one, just because AMC doesn't have much of a place. Okay, so Apollo's actually one of those characters who on paper is like hidden a lot better than he sounds. You've got a global. Your 3 is like a movement speed buff and debuff for yourself and your whole team. It can slow enemies, but it also can buff it can slow enemies and it can make you and your teammates faster, which is crazy. I think a lot of people don't even know Apollo's kit, actually. Like, I bet you people don't even know that. And your 2 gives you protections. It's not just a mez. It gives you 30 protections. That's really good for trading because the mez, yes, when you hit them, it immediately goes away, but you still want to be using your mez in trades because that's still 1 free auto, and then you get the 30 protections for 5 seconds. That makes Apollo really good for trading, especially if your passive pops. Obviously, everyone knows your passive's crazy, 100% attack speed buff. Your 1's a lot better now. It's actually, maybe it was Apollo they made his 1 faster and easier to hit. So yeah, really, I think the only reason why people don't play Apollo is because just other hunters are better. And because the main reason to play Apollo would be his global, and Chernobog just has a better global. That's the only reasons why people don't play Apollo. Yeah, Apollo's global is just not very practical. You have to waste all your mana to use it. Like, I don't know how I want to gauge Apollo based off of the fact that Chernobog just does his spot in the game better. I think what we'll do is we'll have another change. We're going to put On Her to A tier. On Her definitely should not have been B+ tier. His early game's too strong. And like I said, in the right hands, you know. I mean, just play fucking on her, guys. If you suck at on her, just play him a decent amount. You'll get good enough. I think he's good in A tier, but again, when people first pick him up, he's probably gonna feel donkey dude. It's just a character you have to practice on. Arachne is one of those pub stomp characters. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of bronzes in here watching this video thinking that Arachne is like SS tier. She's not. She's just very pub stompy. At a high level, you'll like never see Arachne. You don't even see Arachnes in like high tier rank or upper tier rank. You'll barely see her because even at that level, she starts to fall off. You don't even need like communication. It's just anyone who knows how to team fight properly. She'll have a hard time running into those types of people. But she's a basic attack assassin that's like really good in the early game. Her early game's crazy. You can do some cool tricks with her webs and get early ganks on the solo lane. Do some cringe ganks, get some free kills on the solo lane every game. This thing got buffed. This thing's crazy now. You get that stun off so fast. If you don't have beads and it's late game where she has like all her items, it feels so terrible. And her ult is a really good escape or a really good chase tool. So on paper, her abilities are pretty good. It's just they're very impractical because she is an auto attack assassin. You have to be able to get right in on people and be able to hit them multiple times from like literally directly in them, like right in the team fight, even though you don't have, all you have is mobility, you don't have tankiness. So if people focus you, you will get deleted. But we do have to take into account a little bit that Arachne can pub stomp lobbies. So because she can pub stomp lobbies, I think I have to put her in B or B plus tier. I think I'd rather have these people on my team though, is the thing, most of the time. We'll put her B plus just for pub stomp. Just know that in actuality, I think she's more of a B tier character and like literally behind everybody, like bottom B tier. But because of her pub stomp capabilities, I think I have to put her in B plus tier. All right, moving on now to our boy Ares. Extra damage for building aura items. You already kind of want to build aura items on support. Decent little passive, makes Ares hit like a truck when his abilities already hit pretty decently. Especially his change. Your change. It's a cripple. Cripples are extremely strong. It can do a ton of damage. Oh, and it's a speed buff and a slow at the same time. I mean, this ability is just crazy. Your two people that use Ares' 2 correctly are the people that are my dad. This ability is one of those abilities like Achilles' 2. It's busted. 40 protections and an aura around you. 30% CC reduction. And then increased basic attack damage. And then you get HP 5 and a bonus with your shackles. Your 2 is crazy. You have to be using Ares' 2 correctly. Flamethrower used to be complete trash. Now it's decent. It does decent damage, but the main reason why it's decent is because it makes Ares' clear really good. It does a lot of damage to the minions. Everyone knows the Ares ult. It can counter people that don't have CC immune ults because then they have to have beads. You know the drill with Ares ult. So the thing with Ares is that, again, he's one of those no escapes, no dashes type of guardians. So that's a big weakness for him. Another big weakness is that no escape can just do a little bit of damage a lot of the time, or a decent amount of damage a lot of times. People are going to be getting out of it. Sometimes you'll die in it, even though you get the 20% damage mitigation. And then your flamethrower falls off. It's not an amazing ability. Your 2 amazing abilities that are always amazing are your 1 and your 2. People are missing their 1 a lot. So yeah, that's Ares for you. Right, let's move on to the ranking of our boy Ares here. I think we have to put Ares B plus tier. And the reason why we have to put Ares B plus tier, even though he's also kind of a pub stompy god, he probably feels a lot better than B plus tier to a lot of you guys, especially in your more low tier lobbies. But the thing is with Ares is he's too situational, and he does have the weakness of being able to be stomped. It's just his placement in this game. In the grand scheme of things, he's more of a B plus tier character. Another one of the impracticalities you have to look at with Ares is that you need blink on him. You have to go blink on Ares, so that's a relic slot that's filled up. And then besides when you have blink, you're literally just walking up to people and trying to hit your chains on them. That's gonna be super telegraphed. Sometimes your ults are gonna be super telegraphed if you're trying to ult without blink. People are going to be able to dodge that shit. They're going to see it coming a mile away. All right, so Artemis is one of those characters where I've always thought that she's actually a lot better than other people think. I think after she got like buffs to her suppress the insulin ability, people started to see that a little bit more. But I do think people still can't get past the fact that she's just pretty unsafe. But I mean, this gives you 25% movement speed. That's not terrible. Her passive's good. Her 1, it just takes practice. It's like on her's pillar and impale combo. A lot of people are using her traps incorrectly, and they're not getting the max value out of her trap. Her trap is a super strong ability, in my opinion. Obviously, her 3 is good. Her ult is wishy-washy, inconsistent. Sometimes you can get big boars off in team fights and help your teams win a team fight. Sometimes the boar is a complete and utter difference maker, and if you're winning your 1v1s in the duo lane, and sometimes this motherfucker attacks minions or he just doesn't attack the person that's right in front of him and he gets you killed. When Tusky does work, he's pretty decent though. So for me, the big mishaps with this character are the fact that there's just other characters that are better. She is a little bit more unsafe than a lot of other hunters, especially hunters. Hunters are super safe in this game a lot of the times. And then the fact that her trap's kind of situational, because even if you're super good with her trap, it still requires a little bit of ignorance from the enemy and for them to be walking into your traps in the first place. So it's not the most practical ability. We'll put Arachne above Anubis because she doesn't fall off super hard like Anubis does, or she's not super easy to counter like Anubis is, but we're going to put her below Agni there. Okay, so we're doing Artio next. I've never been a fan of Artio. I think Artio is a super boring character. Characters that don't really have ults are super boring, and all this does is give you a little bit of movement speed, and it gives you a little bit of MP5, so it's not even very good. Obviously, she has an AoE stun. She has an AoE cripple. She has a lot of sustain. She does decent damage when you're using all of her abilities. I do think she has a little bit of a mana problem, even despite this ult. Especially because people don't be leveling up the ult. They just level up these. Her passive's kind of whatever. I just feel like this is a very whatever character. I feel like she'll never be, just because of the way her kit is, she'll never be a great support. The only thing she'll ever be great at is in solo lane, and that's when her damage is just, you know, buffed, and, you know, her sustain was greater and everything. Like, yeah. I'm going kind of delirious at this point, and we're still in the A's, but just know I don't think Artio is very good. She's not trash, but I just don't think she's very good. And I'm actually gonna end up putting Artio in the bottom of C tier, and that's mostly based off of the fact that I just don't see a reason to ever play this character. She's trash in support, in my opinion. Well, not trash, but she's bad in support. And I feel like there's so many solos that are better than her. And she's boring. Lol. There's just no reason to play this character. And because there's no reason to play her, it's bottom of C tier. Okay, moving on to Athena. This might be one of the best characters on paper. Reach, it's a pretty decent passive. Your 1, it's decent, but the real reason for your 1 is for this combo. Shield Wall plus Confound is one of the dirtiest fucking combos in the entire game. Taunt is a really OP ability. It's an attack speed slow. It does damage now. Obviously, it's a 2-second taunt at max rank. Shield Wall actually can do a shit ton of damage. It's a 20% slow. You can build mid Guardian Mail and have this combo have an even bigger slow onto it because you're forcing people to auto attack you, and that's what mid Guardian Mail does. When they auto attack you, it slows them even more. And then you have a ult, or a global ult, which globals are insane. Used to be 30% mitigation. Now it's 20% mitigation to the person you land on. A ton of damage to anyone around them. And you're giving them 20% movement speed. This is one of the best ults in the entire game. So not only do you have one of the best combos in the entire game, you have one of the best ults in the entire game. So as long as you're not a super telegraphed person, this is just going to do wonders for you. To be honest, from my personal experience, I've had shit tons of success on Athena. So I know she's been nerfed. And she was definitely way better before she was nerfed. However, I'm putting Athena SS tier, and that might end up being the only SS tier character. I'm not sure right now, but I really do think Athena is insane. Atlas is one of those characters where I don't really get why pros have played him so much. I feel like they lose every single time they pick this character. He sees very little success, and I feel like he's a little bit of a pub stompy god because he does a crap load of damage for a Guardian, but for me, he's very unsafe. Like, yes, you have this long-range dash, but this long-range dash is really easy to get in front of and block and cancel his dash out. Your pickup's not the most practical thing. You're usually only hitting it super consistently on bad players or in situations where there's nothing they could do about it. I feel like his 1's not a super good ability. Doesn't do a lot of damage. The combo with the 2 doesn't happen too often. Your passive's really nice, though, and your ult is super nice, but even the ult's not always getting a shit ton of value out of it. You have to be very smart with the ult and placing it at the correct times. And yeah, that'll help you win team fights a lot better, kill people faster. So yeah, I think his ult's probably the best part of his kit. It's just, I feel like even on paper, like just look at these abilities. These abilities on paper aren't the greatest in my opinion. And then we've seen it in SPL and in my own games I've seen it. I don't feel like he has the most success. A lot of the success you see is just the fact that you're able to do shit tons of damage to people. And in low tier lobbies, you can just carry on support sometimes. All right, so I think I'm going to end up putting Atlas between Ao Kuang and Arachne. So obviously a character like Awilix is decently situational because even though with Moonlight Charge, you can knock up people into the air, it's not the most practical. It doesn't do it every time. You have to know when to use it. And then obviously, it can be beads. And this is one of those ults where if people beads your ult because you're using it at range, but what it does is give you physical power and attack speed besides the pull. A lot of times this is an ult that just ends up doing almost nothing. It has the impracticality of you think that they're going to get knocked up, but they don't, or maybe you just use it at the wrong time. This ult a lot of times just doesn't see any impact. But against teams that have a lot of leaps, or maybe you have a lot of knockups on your own team, that ult is insanely powerful. I feel like Owilix is crazy early game. Physical power increase. If you have not taken her down in the last 5 seconds and she strikes an enemy first, you increase her physical power by 30% for 4 seconds. That's a crazy passive. But honestly, when I look at her 1, 2, and 3 in the grand scheme of things, I think they're actually only decent abilities. They're not great abilities. They only feel great because early game and with her passive, I feel like she has high numbers. Their passive and ult and her early game numbers, they just feel like they do a crap ton of damage. But the effects that they actually do are only decent. So I feel like she falls off late game, and it really makes it to where the only point in ever really playing her is if you know you're going to be able to get off a lot of good ults within that particular match. We'll put a Willix behind Ao Kuang. Next up, we have Baba Yaga. And I think Baba Yaga's crazy good. This potion ability, even though it's random, does a ton of damage. You can get super lucky, get really good brews. You can have 2 of them at the same time. You can keep one in your freaking consumable slot. This dash is a good ability. You get freaking 35% damage mitigation in your dash. Her 1's a good ability. Yes, it can get a little bit unlucky because it is random and sometimes you don't get the one you want. Her passive's good. It builds stacks. And then her house, the amount of times I've seen this ability save a Baba Yaga's life. She's really hard to kill once she goes into her house because of the health shield. The house does a ton of damage. It's not clunky like it used to be. I just feel like Baba Yaga does a ton of damage, and it's kind of for free. None of her abilities are impractical, and she's hard to kill. She's just one of those really good mages in the game, in my opinion. And I feel like a lot of people don't play her just because she's boring and ugly. So I was thinking about putting Baba Yaga in S tier because she's ugly. But then again, I thought, no, she's a little bit too good for S tier. Sometimes people think that her house is an actual god and they chase her house around and start shooting it. And so that ends up helping your team a lot. So I think I'm going to actually put her SS tier for that reason. Next up, we have Bacchus. I feel like Bacchus is another one of those guardians. He just does a ton of damage. I think he's good in lane. He's super hard to kill because of the protections and the mitigations that he's getting from his passive and from his 1 combined. You get power on your 1 now. Ult does a ton of damage. Your ult, 6-second intoxication debuff. 6 seconds of being drunk. That's pretty crazy. However, and he has anti-heal too. Even has anti-heal. However, your 3 can be canceled, and your escape is also your engage. So in terms of supportive effects and peeling, he's not the best god at peeling, I would say. I think I'm going to end up putting Bacchus in the A tier. And that's mostly because I think Bacchus also has a little bit of pub stompiness to him, like Ares, but he's not super situational like Ares. The only time Bacchus feels really bad is if they're constantly canceling your burp, potentially. But besides that, he never really feels super bad, so I think Bacchus is A tier. Next up, we have Bakasura. He's kind of like Arachne. He's a super pub stompy god in low tier and bronze. Bakasura is probably still running lobbies even to this day, even though I think this is like the hardest he's ever fallen off. I think a big disadvantage Bakasura has compared to Arachne, even though he's super good at hyper farming, he's probably the best hyper farmer in the game. That's because this character actually needs to get to late game to do anything, but late game is kind of like a double-edged sword where late game is also the team fight phase, so people are going to be better at dealing with you, but that's also when you finally start doing a million damage. You can kill people super quick, whereas I feel like Arachne can do that a little bit earlier than Bakasura. None of his abilities are crazy. I mean, the damage that he can deal is crazy. It's like numbers-wise, and I guess things that increase his numbers can be nice. I mean, his 1 has a healing reduction on it. However, I just don't feel like any of these abilities are super great. He's too easy to deal with, and let's just think about the practicality. Have you, like, when's the last time you saw a Bakasura go off if you're in, like, fucking Platinum or higher? I feel like this character's kind of dead in the water. I want this character to be dead in the water. So, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Bakasura's trash. Bakasura being the first character I called trash, he's also going to be the first character. I'm just going to go ahead and put him in the F tier there. Baron Samedi's a character that I feel like sounds a lot better on paper, but for some reason doesn't get as much success as he should. And I do think he's better in support because he has decent supportive effects. And as a mage without defense, he's just too unsafe, I'd feel like. Your coffin, you put yourself in place. Is there even damage mitigation on your coffin? Okay, there is damage mitigation on your coffin, but you put yourself in place. And then also the fact he just doesn't have a dash in general. If you miss your heal, you don't even get movement speed. You could technically not even have movement speed sometimes. It's just crazy. This isn't even an instant CC on your 3. You're just super unsafe. But, I mean, Hysteria's really helpful. Yeah, you get... So, with his passive's actually great because your passive gives you Baron's Brew. It gives you bonus effects on your abilities and 20% additional damage from Baron Samedi. That's crazy. So, it has a really good passive. Your 1 can do a 30% power reduction and a 30% attack speed reduction. That's great. Your 2's busted. It's a crazy big heal and 25% movement speed to everybody around you, not just yourself. Then he also has a root and a big CC ult. For support, to me, that sounds really crazy to me. Like, obviously, he doesn't have Guardian stats, so even when you're building him tanky, and he doesn't have, like, the movement and stuff, he's gonna be a little bit easier to kill, so that's his big weakness. Anti-heal is another decent weakness. You miss your 2, that feels super bad, but you can get his cooldowns to be really low on this character. The Coffin can be such a crazy ability for team fights. So, I don't know. I don't see him used a lot. I did see him used very recently as support, though, in SBL, so we're going to definitely rate this character. Yeah, screw statistics. I'm thinking this character is definitely A tier. I like him better than On Her. I feel like he's kind of around On Her level. We're going to put Baron at the top of A tier for now. Bastet is one of those characters that I think has fallen off. I don't see her very often. And a lot of her, like, the thing is, she has low CC, but she does do a crap ton of damage. It's just obviously that doesn't matter much because, I mean, if her damage numbers were crazy, she'd just be getting played. That's just how Smite works. If your damage numbers are too good, she's going to see play. So they're obviously at a balanced level, and she only does maybe a little bit more damage than some of the other characters because her kit's also weaker. Jump in and jump out, decent. Passive, decent. Razor Whip, decent. This cat is whatever. Your ult, people miss it half of the time. Decent character. Okay, so I think I've decided I'm going to just put her... I'm going to end up putting Bastet top of B tier. And the reason why she's below some of these other characters is I just feel like these other characters have a more of a place, like a Wheelix. Really good with her ult. And into certain team comps. Atlas can pub stomp. He does a ton of damage. Arachne can pub stomp. Ares is obviously really good into comps that don't have a lot of CC immunity. She just doesn't have as much of a place, in my opinion. So she's going to be top of B tier. Bellona is another character that sounds a lot better on paper than what we actually end up getting to see. But now that they've buffed Warriors, I think people are probably sleeping on her a little bit now. And they just haven't realized it yet because, you know, this patch just started happening. You know, Warriors just started getting buffed and mages just started getting nerfed. But she's probably slept on. You know, your passive can give you a good amount of protections and movement speed. She's super hard to trade in. She counters Hunters a decent amount. I mean, what? This is a disarm and then she heals every 3 autos. This gives you block stacks and a slow. This does a shit ton of damage. I feel like she's pretty decent in lane. You can't trade into her in her Eagles Rally, and her Eagles Rally can help the whole team. And practicality of it, most of the time you're just using it for the damage and for the stun, and big team fights aren't happening in this. People are smart enough to not team fight into Eagles Rally. Yes, this has sustain on it, but if people are bursting you, it's not going to matter much. This can get canceled. This is like her movement, I guess, and it's very short range. Okay, passive might slightly fall off Legging. I don't know, the passive's pretty good. So yeah, she just has little things you can knock her for here and there on pretty much every ability. But in the grand scheme of things, I think Bellona's pretty good. I think what I'm going to end up doing is putting Bellona at the back of A tier, because I feel like she doesn't have as much of a place and as much of a reason to play her as the characters above her. But these characters in B+ tier, I feel like she's just more consistent than them. She's less situation. All right, Cabrakan. Just off of the top of my head, I bet Cabrakan's decent in jungle, solo, and support. Obviously, he gets a lot better when your ult's going to be getting a lot of value. There's people that aren't going to be able to get out of it. At least not very fast. You know, immobile characters are going to stay in your trimmers forever. And he does just beat ass. You know, his abilities do a lot of damage. You know, for a Guardian, he can beat ass. That's why people play him in solo sometimes and in jungle. He's immune to slows in his 1, right? I'm just trying to think of weaknesses on this character and why this character doesn't see as much play. I think it's probably just due to other characters just simply being better and in practicalities. Your ult, some people aren't going to give a shit about your ult. A lot of people miss their ult. People be walking through the ult's walls. They'll glitch out on top of the ult. This ability, people a lot of times will get out of it before it ends up doing a lot of damage or getting a lot of value. I think it's this one doesn't always stun. Yeah, this one doesn't always stun. So, yeah, and these are obviously both short-range abilities. I mean, he's a pretty short-range character, so it's just in practicalities and things like that. Little knickknacks here and there that kind of bog him down. I might be trolling with this placement. I think I'm going to put him above Apollo, though. That's how I'm feeling. Putting him above Apollo. I have my reasons. But if I explain every little thought that goes in my head, this video is going to be 20 hours long. Let's move on. All right, Camazotz is one of those characters. I can't tell if I think he's underrated or overrated. Okay, so he's a character that relies a shit ton on sustain. He does a good amount of damage. He has a decent amount of mobility now that they buffed the range on his 3. Passive actually gives him so much sustain. On your 2, one thing you have to realize about Camazotz 2, I'm just going to read this for you guys. If the target was a buff holder, Oracle, or Alpha Harpy, they will be marked, and Camazotz will receive a heal as well as a stackable vampirism buff that lasts 300 seconds. Marked monsters will not provide Camazotz with another stack of vampirism or an additional heal. Your max buff stacks are 3. You need to be making sure that you're killing people with your vampire bats, with vampire bats active, that are buff holders, oracles, or alpha harpies, because that'll give you the stacks of vampirism, and that'll make this character better. I think the huge selling point to Camazotz, besides the fact that he has a lot of sustain and he's just decent all the way around the board, decent or good all the way around the board, is this ult, Bat Out of Hell. I think Camazotz haters, they're hating on the fact that he's low CC, but the thing with Bat Out of Hell is, late game, if you want to kill somebody, you will kill them. Jump in, you can 100% get your 1 or 2 off, like 99% of the time before you die, as long as when you jumped in, you weren't low. That'll do a ton of damage, and then you go into Bat Out of Hell, you hit 3 swoops while you're fucking immune to damage, and they're dead. You might die afterwards, but you can trade 100% of the time with Camazotz late game, and sometimes that's all you need to do to win. Maybe their mage is carrying them. Guess what? You can choose to kill their mage whenever you want because you have Bat Out of Hell. Bat Out of Hell is just underrated. Being able to do damage while being completely immune to damage is OP as fuck. So I do have a little bit of bias because I don't play the jungle or the ADC role a ton. So like I'm not as privy as I should be to what those types of players that main those roles are really looking for. However, I think Camazotz does fill the slot of what those types of people are looking for. So I am going to put Camazotz in the A+ tier. Okay, I'm going to be completely honest. I think me and a lot of other people used to think Cerberus was like one of the worst characters in the game. That's complete dog shit. However, I think Cerberus has actually been really good in the solo lane for a long time now. And he's not as bad in support, especially in low tier. Like in low tier, you can destroy people, especially before they nerfed his 2. This prot shred and just the amount of damage Cerb does, especially if you can be hitting your 1 stun reliably, he does, and like he might be like the most damaging guardian. Like he's definitely up there for most damaging guardian. He's top 3. So you can carry games in support with Cerberus, especially if you're using your ult well and you have good ult targets, even though this ult is just a way worse version of the Ares ult. And then in solo, he's really good. He counters sustain because of his passive. His passive is really good. I've seen Cerberus's heal from Anubis lifesteal. Like Anubis was ulting them, and Anubis was literally healing the Cerberus because of this. Yeah, I think Cerberus is really good in solo and not as bad as you would think in support. So this is probably going to be another one of my controversial picks. I have to put him a little bit higher because you can play him in 2 different roles, even though in one of them he's kind of bad. And I might be overrating him in the solo, but I do think he's really good in solo as a thing. So we're definitely going to be putting Cerberus in the A tier. I think I'll even put him above Bellona, to be honest. Maybe Bacchus too. We'll put him right here. I'm going to put Cerb there. I could be way off on that one, but hopefully not. Chernunnos. This is a character that I feel like fell off. Like, this dude was like top of meta ever since his Bramble Blast became really good and got the freaking Root Cripple on it. But now people never play him. Chernunnos is really strong in 1v1s. Because of the buffs you get from your 1, this is a pretty good ability. If you get up close with your passive, that's another extra damage, which you can do for free with your Horn Charge. And then Bramble Blast, usually, if people aren't using their beads, maybe they don't have their relics for CC immunity, Bramble Blast into the Wild Hunt should just be a win in that 1v1. So I think he's good in 1v1s. Yeah, your ult's pretty freaking impractical. Your 3 is kind of just going to be a normal dash most of the time. Your passives most of the time not doing anything at all. And not all of these are even that useful. So I get why people don't play him. I just feel like turn hits harder than a lot of other hunters. But I mean, I guess I get it. I mean, this ult isn't super good. I think he just really shines in lane is what it is. And you actually, I think this is kind of going along with On Her. I think ADC players are starting to prefer characters that shine in lane more, even if they're not as good late game, because of the advantage they can get in the early game. And the fact that playing a hunter, I mean, hunters are hunters. Hunters are going to destroy people late game either way. The fall off doesn't matter that much, so you might as well just have the characters that are better in the early game. I feel like this character is one of the better early game characters, right? His clear can't be bad with Bramble Blast, right? I think he's a decent character. So I started off not understanding at all why people aren't really playing Kern anymore. And then when I looked at his abilities, I feel like on paper, his abilities aren't that good. He might be one of those characters that's the opposite, where on paper, his abilities don't seem that good, but, you know, in actuality, they perform very well. This was a decently hard placement for me to put. I'm going to end up putting him between Bastet and Bellona, though. Here's my boy Chaac. I've been playing a lot of Chaac recently. This passive's kind of whatever, because normally you're playing him in solo, and you're getting the mana buff anyways, and then late game, mana's not really an issue no matter what. However, his kit plays nicely well with each other. You know, Raid Dance. You can make a big slow. You can teleport to people. He does a lot of damage. He wins a lot of lanes. He's pretty safe. I used to think he just fell off super hard in the late game, and that in team fights he didn't do much. But if you're like getting into the backline on Chaac late game, you're doing huge Chaac ults. You have to do huge Chaac ults. But if you're doing huge Chaac ults, and I feel like in this meta with Warrior's Act, the items, unless we're talking super late game and you're playing into like crit hunters without spectral, I feel like you can live long enough with your rain dance and your protection buff from your 2 that you can do a lot late game now on Chaac. So now he has a good early game and a good late game. So he's obviously going to get a decent amount of points for that. That being said, I don't think there's anything special enough about Chaac, and his numbers just aren't busted enough. I don't know if I want to put him A+ tier. If I did, he'd be bottom. Thinking Chaac would be like potentially A tier, maybe. I might be underrating on her still just because he's so good early game. His combo is really good if you can hit his combo. His 3's good. So I'm thinking of switching up on her spot, to be honest. At the same time, I don't know, man. It's so hard. This is so hard, guys. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going with the thought that the on her thing is more of an SPL thing, and it's more of just a preference of wanting a character that's super good in the early game, in the SPL specifically. And with that in mind, I think I'm going to put Chaac in this slot right here. And the reason why he's below Baron is just because Baron, you can technically play Baron solo support and mid. And Baron on paper is just kind of crazy, so we're going to put him here. Chang'e is one of those characters that kind of sucks ass, I feel like. He probably sounds a lot better on paper, maybe. I never use the rabbit. I don't even think using the rabbit's super helpful. You can play her in mid and solo, though. She's actually pretty decent in solo, I think. The dance movement speed's good. That part of the passive's nice. Movement speed after every ability, I think it is. But these are just, like, really basic abilities, okay? Low cooldown, decent damage. 2, Beads Aegis, get a little bit of mana restore. That is nice. That is nice, right? But if you're going to have an ability that does no damage on a mage, you want to make sure your other abilities do a ton of damage. I feel like her 1 doesn't do a ton of damage. It's relying on the 6-second cooldown. Your 3 also doesn't do a ton of damage, and it has a 12-second cooldown. It's relying on the heal for the value. And then your ult scales off of how many people you're hitting with it. If you're only hitting one person with it, I feel like it's not that good. I feel like the damage on her ult isn't good enough for those times when you only hit one person. I feel like her ult only feels really sexy whenever you're hitting at least 3 people with it. So I just feel like I just feel like this character, she's just underwhelming in general. Especially because anti-heal will counter like one of the most important things about her. Just an underwhelming character. I think Artio's probably, like, there's no reason to ever play Artio or Chang'e. But I think Chang'e is better than Baka. But I think she's probably worse than Artio, so we're going to put her here. I feel like Chiron's fallen off a little bit. I feel like people realize that, yes, whenever you play Chiron, you get a shit ton of damage numbers. You'll be doing really high damage numbers on this character for whatever reason. But the actual impact and the supportive capabilities aren't always as high as you would want them to be. I feel like his passive's really good, just gives you a ton of extra health. Your ult's really good, but it is really slow, so when you use it far away, it's very easy to dodge. Your 3's decent. I don't think his 3's like OP or anything. I just think he has a decent 3. Your 2's great, but it's not the most practical thing. Like, the shield health is awesome on it, but it requires the people to hit the person back, and that's not always going to happen. Sometimes your hunter is going to not know that you hit them with the 2, and that trying to trade into them is the better option. They're just going to walk away, and then they're going to end up getting killed. The thing on us 2 also only lasts 3 seconds, which isn't quite long enough for my taste. And then you've got your 1. Your 1 hits decently hard. It's a 1 second silence, slow. However, it's a 1 second silence only, so you have to use it at the right times. A lot of people are just throwing this out there and not using it at the right times. Using your 1 at the right time is going to be a decent differentiation between good and bad Chirons. But like, as you can see from what I've said, like on paper, his kit's not actually super crazy, man. This kit is not super crazy on paper. Probably still maybe above average. I think I'll be doing Chiron a disservice if I think about the too hard on this character specifically with the impracticalities of his ult and everything and his 2. So I'm going to think more closer to max potential on Chiron and thinking like that, I think I'm gonna put him bottom of A+ tier, but I could see you putting him A tier around here as well. Now, if you guys know me, you'll know that Charybdis sucks ass. Don't give a fuck what her passive says. Her ult is like the worst ult in the entire game, and your ult is your most important ability, so that's a big thing. Who gives a fuck about her 1? Who gives a fuck about her 2? On paper, they sound a lot better than they are in practice. Every time I play Charybdis, I feel like it's because of the way her auto chain works, maybe. But if I don't have my 1 popped, I feel like I hit for dog shit. And I'm pretty sure your 1 has like a self-slow on it. You don't move as fast during your 1. Her 3 is really good. But at the same time, it's not as good as it sounds. The knock-up on the, when you do the bigger form where you can make it knock up, good players are just not going to walk directly on it. They're going to walk 1 step behind it the entire time, and they'll just follow you until you come back up. So yeah, this character sucks. Charybdis is a hunter, and as a hunter in the late game, she's always going to hit like a truck, even if she doesn't hit as truckish as most of the other hunters, but we're not going to give her the hunter crutch, and we're going to put her in F tier. Should we put her above Bakasura? I'm going to personally put her above Bakasura, though. But I could see you doing either one. All right, we got our boy Chernobog. Even though Chernobog's getting nerfed, is Chernobog just the quintessential hunter? I feel like globals are just so good on hunters, and he has the best global. His ult's sick. 15% damage mitigation, an instant global anywhere you want to go. 15% movement speed. It slows the enemy. Just ult's crazy good. Dash is crazy good. Yeah, it does damage. It does decent damage. And normally it's just a little decent dash. But if you're by a wall, you can hide in the wall for like 3 whole seconds. Is it 3 seconds? Yeah, 3 seconds, which is a decent amount of time. And then you get a second dash afterwards. So his 3 is great. His 1 and 2 combo is decent. His 1's decent wave clear and everything. There's nothing to hate on at all. 50% stim, though, that's what we need to know about. That he has a 50% stim, and his passive makes him hit a little bit harder. He's just quintessential. Like, especially after nerfs. I can't really say he's, like, busted or broken or anything, but I feel like he's just good in every way possible. I think for now, I'm going to put Chernobog SS tier. We'll put him right here for now. That might change later. I'm going to have to think more. All right, I'm a Chiron lover. I think Chiron does a crap ton of damage. I highly value just using Chiron ults for damage. Like, you know, obviously build full power. At the start of a team fight, just pop Chiron ult from max range and just hit 3 people with it. That is a lot of damage to start the team fight off with, because you're also getting your 2 off, and your 2 hits like a truck, and it's for free. It can't miss. Doing that at the beginning of a team fight is so much damage. Your 3, I feel like he has a really good dash. You get bonus power while you're in your 3. So wait, if you're attacking, I didn't even know this. If you're a basic attacking in Chiron 3, you get 50 bonus power. That makes his 3 even better. I feel like his 1 good. I feel like his passive's the only part that's like whatever. Like, what is bad about Chiron? I think what is bad about Chiron is that he is an ability hunter, and that he's just one of those characters that not many people like. People rather play Ullr and do their sick Ullr montages. But I honestly don't understand what is bad about Chiron. Literally, besides the fact that he's not OP, there's better hunters, and he's an ability hunter, which is usually not meta. Alright, so I've thought about it long and hard. I think I'm going to put Chiron just above Bellona. And I think this is going to be one of those placements that people don't completely understand. Maybe they think you should be B+ tier, at least below Bellona, but promise me, get good at Chiron, use your ult at the start of team fights, level your 2 first, and trust me, this character is crazy sometimes. Chronos can be a late game monster. You get 25 times 5, however much extra power that is, from your passive. Your 2 actually hits pretty good, and it's on a 5-second cooldown. I said your 2, I meant your 1. Your 3 hits decent, and it's got a 1-second stun. Your ult's impractical because you have to use it at the right time. A lot of people die before they get it off, but if you get it off, it's basically like having 2 lives. Doesn't do any damage, but having 2 lives, that can increase your damage output by a lot, or at least make you survive. Your 2's pretty decent. Your 2 makes him have the ability to play as an ADC as well. I see a lot of people doing, like, I think Bumba's dagger or Bumba's hammer or something in the jungle with Cronus. I just know late game, this character splookies on people. I just feel like a lot of people aren't as good at him, and they don't want to get to late game. I do think early game, this character is nowhere near as good. So yeah, let's see where we're going to put this character. I think I'm going to put Chronos B tier, because I do think there's just a ton of characters that are better than Chronos. And I also just think that people aren't good at Chronos, and you really do have to get to late game for Chronos to be super good, in my opinion. Most of the time, he's just okay. Alright, Cliodhna, here's a character that nobody plays anymore. He's one of those characters where, like, when you end the game, you're like, wait, I did 80,000 damage that game? My impact felt like I did half that. And it's like, yeah, I don't know what, it's some weird thing with Cliodhna where it feels like a lot of the damage she she ends up doing doesn't matter. She doesn't feel like a jungler, even though she can hide in walls. She feels more like a laner, especially because she can kind of win lanes for free with her ult, because her ult can insta-clear wave, and she gets 2 of them, so you don't even have to not have an ult after that. You can still have an ult after that. I feel like all of her abilities are decent. Like, she does decent damage. Going into a wall can be really good. That's a sick ability if used correctly. There's not a lot bad about her. I'm just thinking maybe her numbers. I'm pretty sure her numbers got nerfed when she first came out, and they might have nerfed her numbers a little too much, or maybe it's just her kit's just one of those kits where you can't quite put your finger on it, but it's just not the best kit in the world. Could just be one of those situations. Gonna put Cleo here in the A tier between Honor and Cerberus based off of vibes. That's just what my brain's telling me to do. That's how she feels. That's where I'm putting her. Cthulhu is one of those characters that I feel is kind of an ult bot, but even in a lot of situations, your ult isn't even like super OP. I feel like his passive's just whatever. I feel like your 3 is kind of whatever. I feel like your 2 is kind of whatever. I feel like his 1 is good. And then your ult can be good if you use it in the right situations. You have to use it in team fights. You have to be using it on their backline. You have to know which of the ult abilities to use and when. And then you have to be not getting destroyed by Hunter's Kinsice, you know? Because there are some times where even though you get a shit ton of health, you still get blown up on Cthulhu. So I feel like Cthulhu ult is thought of... It's so actually controversial. I feel like some people think Cthulhu ult is just you're a bigger target, and some people think Cthulhu ult is OP. I'm in the middle, so yeah. Other things I can say about Cthulhu, I think he's pretty trash in support. You have to play him in solo, and I think he's pretty decent in lane. Like, whenever I play Cthulhu in lane, and from what I've seen, he can win some lanes, or at least he won't get destroyed in lanes. So he has, like, the early game going for him, and then late game, you can be a monster with your ult in certain situations, but in the grand scheme of things, again, his kit in general, when you look at all of them, it's not the best. This is kind of another vibe slot. I think Cthulhu is probably one of those characters that is also a lot better in lower tier games. But again, I can't have much deep analytical analysis for this placement. This is just where I feel like Cthulhu should be. Cuchulainn is one of those characters that has to be on the up and up, right, guys? There's no way this character is not on the up and up. His transformation's sick. You can do blink. You can do a blink, ult into the back line. Maybe get your 1 and 3 off 2. Transform, second ult, second 1 and 3, and your 2's out for free at that point. I feel like he just does a lot of damage. At this point, Warrior's Axe is going crazy on this character. I don't think he's bad in lane. Or he's not bad enough in lane. Yeah, he's whatever. He's good in lane. Blah, 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 blah. And then, like, late game, like, what is bad about Cuchulainn? Cuchulainn just has to be doing it to people at this point in the meta, right? So we're going to give him a pretty decent ranking. I'm starting to think that maybe this list is a little bit Warrior and Guardian bias, potentially. But that being said, I think I'm going to put Cuchulainn here, and I'm actually going to move Camazotz to the top of A tier. I'm going to swap him and Amaterasu. All right, Cupid has to be kind of bad, right? Yeah, your ult can be good into certain matchups. You can force out other ults, but I feel like a lot of times your ult's just, it's not the most practical ability. It's not seeing value a lot. Who gives a shit about Share the Love? I feel like Share the Love's just not a good hunter ability. Your dash is decent, but I feel like it's only decent. And then your 1 is like decent at best. And I feel like your passive is decent at best. So in the grand scheme of things, all in all, he's kind of one of the worst characters in the game, one of the worst hunters, right? I mean, in terms of like Cupid's place in the game, like why you would ever want to pick Cupid, I feel like there's not really. Like, who cares about your heart? Who cares? I don't feel like your ult's important enough. So because of that, I think I'm actually going to put him below Chang'e, like bottom of C tier. Might be a little controversial. Maybe he should be a little higher, but that's how I'm feeling right now. Ji, here's a character that I'm kind of confused why she doesn't get to see more play. She's got, like, basically Ares ult, right? So Ares ult's pretty good, and it's on an assassin. She can teleport. Can you teleport to enemies? Oh, yeah, you can teleport to freaking enemies and teammates. So it's a good escape and a good engage. I think her 2's not bad. Her 1 does an absolute fooky amount of damage, and her passive adds even more damage. I'm guessing they just value other aspects of other Assassin's kit more than her. And she's probably, in the grand scheme of things, because her numbers aren't crazy, just looked at, people are probably just going her when they want to go Powwow. And maybe, you know, junglers in this meta just aren't wanting to go Powwow very much. They're leaving that to their supports. But even without Powwow, I don't think she's bad. Definitely a decent character. I think I'm going to move Cerberus down a little bit. He seems a little too high. I'm going to move Cerberus to like here. Then I think I'm going to move Ji behind Cliodhna just because I think Cliodhna is more diverse, more varietized. Ji is more stagnant. Don't know if that made any sense. Okay, I'm a big Danzaburou fanboy. I love playing Danzaburou in the solo lane. I think people love to say Danzaburu's worst ability is his ult. I feel like his ult is good whenever you have a little bit of tankiness on him and you do the build that I build. Which, by the way, this is the build that I build. Build this, you know, Triple Drumstick, Sigil, Devourer's Gauntlet, Soul Eater, Stone of Binding, Fail Not, Deathbringer. OP as fuck, I promise you. But I mean, let's see. So you can get bonus 40 power on him, which is another reason why it's kind of good in the solo, because you get bonus power. You know, for to build a bit more defense. The 3 is crazy. 20% movement speed. Higher when you leave. When you're actually turning into a leaf, you get even more movement speed. 15% damage reduction. And you have no basic attack penalty. You're slow immune. And you take less damage. And Danzaburou's 3 is just stackarooski. This ability is great. Alluring Spirits takes maybe a little bit of time to get used to, but they eventually know where you should throw it to where you're actually going to be able to hit this very consistently. And obviously, it's a taunt. Taunts are OP. I think this is good. And I just think his one's decent. It can hit pretty hard. It's not the most practical ability, though. I don't like the way they bounce around and but, you know, it's all right. So I definitely think Danzaburou is actually a slept-on god. That being said, it would be kind of troll for me to rank him too much higher based off of my solo escapades. I mean, it isn't just me, though. I mean, I kind of got the idea from a weekend video where, like, I guess the top Danzaburou, the guy who was #1 ranked Danzaburou, he also plays him in solo, so it's obviously pretty decent. So I can give him a little bit of points for his solo escapades. But in ADC, I'll admit his rocket does get a lot worse. He's not the best character in ADC, but I don't give a shit. I have to put Danzaburou right here. We're going to put him behind Bellona. All right, I also think that I'm a little bit biased for Discordia. Obviously, her passive is always nice. She's just a character where, like, I feel so satisfying when I use her. I think her apple's great. It can bounce all the way to their Titan from your Titan, and it does so much damage. The fact that it has the range, the bounce, and the spread with the amount of damage it has, I feel like it's kind of bloated. I think her apple's just straight good. It's just a lot of people miss all their snipes. You don't have to snipe with it, guys. You can use it up close if you suck at aiming. Erratic behavior, obviously not the best for actually getting away from enemies, but erratic behavior reduces your cooldowns, and for me, that turns me on. I really like this ability, and I think her 1-2 combo is great. Your 1-2 combo hits so hard. I think the CC on her 2 is great. I really don't see what's wrong about Discordia. I think what's wrong with Discordia is that there's just better mages. People want a better escape sometimes, and the 2 doesn't hit hard enough. The 2 doesn't hit hard enough, and she doesn't have the most range. I think she probably is slightly below average on range for a range and AoE for a mage. I think she just has a couple of small things about her that bring her down. I'm actually gonna put Discordia between on her and Cliodhna because I feel like she has a thing about her. It's her passive. Her passive that helps your teammates do more damage. That works every game, no matter what, the same amount. It's completely practical. There's no way for that to be mitigated. I feel like the gods behind her have more mitigating factors, and maybe the gods in front of her just have equal or better plus sides or just better kits in general, so that's where she's going. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Erlang, we miss your turtle knock-up. Erlang's one of those characters where I feel like he's going to be hard to rank. I mean, I'm not an Erlang specialist, even though I've had him ranked 10 on, like, multiple accounts. It's just, he's just a weird feeling character. He feels like he should be better. He has a taunt that heals him for a crap ton, and he gets 35 damage mitigation in between that time. Like, what is wrong with your ult other than the fact that, yeah, you could die before it goes off, but if you just use it correctly, that's not going to ever happen. His 3 is still good. With the knock-up, it was OP. Your 2's good, your 1's good, and your passive's good. So what goes wrong with Erlang Shin? I'm not 100% sure. I think it's that he doesn't really have a place. He's not that good in solo lane, and he's not that good in jungle right now either, I'm assuming. So it's just, I think he just doesn't have a place. But, like, on paper, his kit's not bad. Like, he could even still kind of support. Like, it's kind of weird to me. Erlang is a weird character to me. Okay, so because, as y'all can imagine, I'm going to have to end up going off of vibes with Erlang. I'm going to put Erlang bottom of B tier. He can multi-roll, so you have to give him points for multi-rolling. And, like, guys, like, what if, I just don't understand how he is as bad as he is. I don't understand it. He might honestly just be getting slept on. Or maybe his kit's just impractical in a way I can't quantify with words, or I just don't understand. So yeah, vibe check. Bottom of B tier for Erlang. Okay, Eset has to be getting slept on. Eset has to be getting slept on, right? This is a build I've done in the solo. I thought this build worked well in solo. I think her passive's decent. You get 10% cooldown for free. Her 1 does kind of suck, though. I will say her 1 kind of sucks. But Spirit Ball's great. I think Dispel Magic is still OP. And I think her ult is still OP, and her ult gives her a place because her ult is the best objective secure in the game. I mean, it's super busted, does high damage, high healing, 30% damage mitigation. What else does it do? Is that it? Just high damage, high healing, and 30% damage mitigation. I mean, 30% damage mitigation is crazy. That's what they just had a nerf on Athena. Then nerfed that down to 20. So yeah, dude, Eset, you could try to play her in solo. You can try to play her in mid. I think she's best in support, but I think she can multi-role. But I do think this is just one of those characters that is so slept on. This is one of the most annoying characters in the game. Because she gets 10% cooldown for free, and because her cooldowns aren't already super high, I mean 10, 10, 14, you can spam her cooldowns, and these are some of the most annoying cooldowns to get spammed by. She's going to get away from you with Wing Gust, and you're going to be building Ethereal Staff, and so she's going to get so much health off of Wing Gust. The 2, she can snipe you with it, or she can just up close stun you, and then the 3's OP. The 3's just OP. Super hot take incoming. I'm going to put Eset at the bottom of the A+ tier. I really only see her biggest weaknesses as she's decently easy to kill as a support, at least, which is where you're mainly going to be playing her because she is a mage. And then the fact that her 1 is not a super great ability, and her ult's pretty impractical. You do end up wasting it a lot, but you know, ult at max potential is one of the best ult in the games. And then her 2 and her 3 are just great abilities. Her passive gives you MP5, HP5, and 10% cooldown for free. People just have to be sleeping on this character. They just have to be. My boy Fafnir. 3 stuns in the kit. Fafnir's greatest strength is his 2 in both his dragon form and in his normal form. You know, big attack speed buff and a bonus damage buff, which makes doing objectives way faster, which is why you see people bidding Frenzy and Bracer on Fafnir to stack all 3, and they can do objectives super quick. You can kind of just do objectives whenever you want at that point, as long as you have a good objective shredding team besides the Fafnir. Especially if, like, double auto attacker, you can just do Fire Giant versus 5v5, so you'll kill the Fire Giant in 3 seconds. They just have to be at least 3 seconds away. You will get the Fire Giant. Super big strength to Fafnir. It gives him a strong place, and he's actually, again, decent. Besides that fact, he has a disarm with a really long dash. He has a freaking passive that makes him way tankier. His hammer stun's great. All of his dragon form abilities are great. There's really nothing bad about Fafnir. I'm kind of surprised Fafnir doesn't get played more. I think it has to do with how easy it is to blow up when he's transforming. Transformation during team fights is actually hard to get off. You kind of have to transform before the team fight starts, which is unideal just because people can blow you up sometimes. And a lot of times you're just using his ult for the objectives. And I think a lot of people at SPL they have other strategies for making sure they get objectives. They don't want to play the Fafnir route. But I think a low-key underrated way to win a lot of ranked games is to go the Fafnir route. Just make sure you're VGSing, you're pinging, maybe you're talking to people in voice. Tell them, yo guys, I'm playing Fafnir. I have ult up, and I have Frenzy up, and I have freaking Bracer up. Please, let's go do this objective. I promise this Gold Fury dies in 2 seconds. You'll win a lot of games doing that. Because I think most of Fafnir's kit's just great. He has the objective shred upside that gives him a place in the game. And then the fact that in most lobbies, you're not going to get blown up while transforming. I mean, in most ranked lobbies, you can just transform whenever you want. I just think that is like one small weakness that he has. I am going to end up... And he's a little bit more skillful. I guess that's another weakness. He's a little bit more skillful. I'm going to put him bottom of A+ tier right behind Eset. So the way I feel about Fenrir is that he's not the safest assassin because you want to leap in to get the stun off. So there's your, you know, your escape basically. Brutalize doesn't really count as an escape. And then you better hope Brutalize kills them because Seething Howl is just a buff for your Brutalize basically or your autos. And the thing with Brutalize is like it can counter people because it follows dashes. But your Brutalize can also get canceled out. And then your ult is also really good. It's a single target. But the thing is that beads exist. CC ults exist. And so that feels really bad. You can kind of play him in support. So, in his early game, he does a shit ton of damage. I think if he didn't have like really high damage numbers and like just a shit ton of damage with Seething Howl, I think he'd actually be a very bad character probably. Even with his ult. Let's see, where are we going to put this guy? So I think I'm going to put him between Ao Kuang and a Wheelix just because I think Ao Kuang has more upsides, more carry potential. But I'm going to put him above a Wheelix because I feel like he's got a strong early game like a Wheelix, but he doesn't need the knockups and stuff. So we'll put him above a Wheelix there. And he can it's also because he can be played in 2 roles. He can be played in support and jungle. So I think he has to go above a Wheelix at least. So with Freya, I kind of feel similar to Freya as I do Chronos. Obviously, they're both magical ADCs, but I feel like Freya is a late game hyper carry. But her early game's gotten a lot better. She used to just be dog shit early game. I feel like early game, she can actually do a lot now. Let's look at our actual kit. I mean, just boosting damage, giving you range on damage, putting a slow out, putting a little bit of AoE. Just damage galore. But the thing is, your banish is actually really good CC, and your ult is actually really good ult. It's like Camazotz. You can't get hurt, but you can hurt people back. And your passive's decent. It's like 15% lifesteal or something like that. But I do think she has an early game weakness. I think that the magical ADC items are, like, they're just out of meta. Maybe the items aren't super good right now. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I'm having a lot of problems knowing where I want to place Freya, so I'm kind of just gonna place her right here for now. Sorry for that Freya placement. That's one of my least confident placements so far in the tier list. I think Ganesh is Goaty McScroderson. Who cares about Ganesh passive? Ganesh ones, whatever. Ganesh is silence. Obviously, it's close range, but I think it literally gives 60 protections to people around you. It literally gives 60 protections to people around you. That's nutty to have on a 1.8 second silence. Ganesh 2, great. Ganesh 3, great. You can even dash through walls with Ganesh 3. Ganesh ult, great. Does a ton of damage. Really good zone control. Good slow on it. 30% slow and 50 protection reduction. Now, Ganesh's ult is Busterooski, my brewski. I've soloed so many people with Ganesh ult. Obviously, he's a heal character, so you can't really carry with him. And in ranked, on support, you want to play characters more often that can maybe carry more. But I think Ganesh is an exception. He's just so good that it really doesn't matter. He can slightly carry. He does, because, I mean, your ult 3-1 isn't the worst amount of damage. I just think Ganesh is a great character. I think I might be overrating Ganesh a little bit. I'm going to put him top of A+ tier. And one thing I do want to mention, the more I'm looking at Amaterasu's face, the more I'm thinking maybe I put Amaterasu too high. Not sure. We'll see. Hopefully I'm a genius, right? We can have a little disclaimer on Geb. He is, unlike Ganesh, in my opinion, one of those super, like, Pele gods. Even though his ult can do decent damage now, even his shockwaves, I think the damage got buffed recently. He's very Pele, and he's not... You can't carry on Geb, really. You have to have good teammates. It doesn't matter how good of ults or shields or knockups you're doing. You have to have good teammates to win games on Geb. But in terms of peel, Geb is one of the strongest characters. You know, he says fuck you to crit with his passive, which is nice. Your one's whatever. Rarely are you doing, like, anything super crazy on your one. But a knock-up on your two's nice. Your 3 is one of the most OP abilities in the game. Stone Shield, some of the best peel in the game. Cleanses CC. The best Gebs are going to use this to cleanse CC. Pretty sure you can, like, take Dodgy's ult off and stuff with this. And the shield is huge. And then your ult is obviously a super good ult as well. It does a lot of damage. If you hit a lot of people in a team fight, at the beginning of a team fight with this ult, obviously you're going to do big here. So a Geb that's doing good ults and good 3s, anyone can do good 2s. I mean, that you're getting a lot of value there. Like, how can the character be bad? The only way the character can be bad is that you're playing support and ranked, and your teammates suck. That's the only way this character can be bad. So because this is my tier list, and the way my tier list is working, we're not taking the meta or, like, you know, what gods are you going to win the most on, or win the most with in ranked. Because if this was, like, based on meta maybe, or based on, you know, how easy it is to win with this god in ranked, maybe Geb would be lower. But we're kind of doing this some more in general than that. And we're looking at just how good their kit is on paper. A little bit more than that. We're going to put Geb pretty high. Again, this is the support bias coming through. I'm pretty much a support main. But, I mean, Geb's shield is OP. Geb's ult has OP potential. Geb's 2 is really good. Like, I mean, it's Geb, boys. Yes, don't play this character if you want to win all your ranked games. He's better when there's CCs that, you know, you can reliably cleanse, and it'll be OP to cleanse. I've been hearing rumblings of the Gilgamesh being slept on, but I'm not sure I completely agree with them. Some people think his ult's OP. I just think his ult's good. I don't think it's OP. I don't think his 3's OP. I just think it's good. I don't think his 2's OP even. I only think his 2's good. I only think his 1's good. And I only think his passive's good. I don't think there's anything overly great about this character at all. And when I've used him in the solo lane, or when I go against him in the solo lane, I feel like he doesn't fare super well. He's probably more of a jungle character even now. But I just don't think the meta is suiting him. I do think this character is just very slightly underwhelming in the grand scheme of things. Okay, yeah, so Gilgamesh is going here because there's just not a huge reason to play him. There's other characters that might technically be slightly worse than him, but they have something special about them that makes them better in that certain situation. Whereas Gilga, I can't find a reason to ever be like, oh, Gilga's the best option here. You're just playing him for fun. But he can multi-role. He can do solo jungle. Slightly support even. And I've heard rumblings that he's overrated, so we'll give him a little bit benefit of the doubt. We'll put him at the top of B tier. Guan Yu's a character I don't see how he could ever be bad. Some people don't know how to drive the horse, but if you know how to drive the horse is just a great ult. Can it get canceled? I think the 3 can get canceled. However, it's still so much protection. The 3 does so much freaking damage. You can even get it boosted. He has the ability boost. He has a team heal, even though it's very minuscule. Your two's decent, and then all of his cooldowns like reduce each other. So when you build cooldown, because of his in cooldown reduction in his kit, this guy feels like he has no protections. So he's a character that he feels like you can build like full defense on, and because of the protection shred and the super low cooldowns, you'll still destroy people. I'm kind of surprised Guan Yu doesn't see more play. I think it really is because his best ability is something that can be canceled, and people don't value his heal that much right now. But as you can imagine, that's more dealing with the meta, and we don't care about the meta in this household. So I'm going to put Guan Yu right here. I'm going to put him below Bellona for now. Hachiman, one of the safest hunters. If you're building crit and you can hit a 1 from really far away with that extra bonus damage, you can snipe the absolute crap out of people. He has better objective shred for his team because you can drop the banner and give your whole team 20% attack speed, which is nice. Your 3's nice. Who cares about this passive? I think his passive's kind of bad. Your ult's decent. He's just one of those characters where it's like, he's pretty good, but he's not that good. But I honestly can't hate on him too much. I think his passive's like the worst part of him. And then your 1's not practical. A lot of times you can't hit the 1. If you're not building crit, I feel like the 1 isn't that crazy. You know, it's Hachiman, right? It's Hachiman. Here's the thing, though, about Hachiman and some of the other hunters that are like the safest hunters in the game. I feel like there's two things that people have been really appreciating as an ADC. You either appreciate a hunter that's really good in the early game, like on her, or you appreciate a hunter that's like almost impossible to kill, so you make it to late game no matter what. You'll most definitely not get farmed in lane. As long as you have decent clear, you won't fall too far behind. And I feel like Hachiman's one of those characters. And in late game, you're still going to shred because you're a hunter. So we're going to put Hachiman right there for now. So Hades is one of those characters. You can play him in mid, but nobody does that. And I think it's because of the practicality of his abilities. Hades is a mage who has only close range. Your ult's close range is close range, close range, close range. He only has close range things. And so that actually like situationalizes when his impact can be big enough to be quantified as good. A lot more than other mages, because other mages, they'll have more range, they'll have more AoE. That opens up more situations where they can actually be good. I feel like Hades, he's, you know, more closed in because of his close range. However, when Hades is able to pop off, he pops off really hard. Because I feel like his kit's really good. I mean, the spear is great. He has big heals. He can insta-clear in solo lane. He's good in solo lane. He does a lot of damage. And your ult gives you so many protections that you're actually, like, insanely hard to kill in your ult, even when you build full damage, you know, and he's really good with life still. So, I do think because he's so good in solo lane, he has the sustain. He's actually harder to kill than you'd think. Like, he does a lot of damage. He has all this stuff great going for him. And his one weakness is just his range and his like practicality of actually getting the damage off on his kit. Because if you're only blowing up one person, a lot of times that's not enough. A lot of characters can blow up one person. You want to try to get big Hades ults. You want to be hitting multiple people in the team fights for free. And that's just not always possible. And a lot of times you have to put yourself in danger. So a lot of times you actually need your ult to even do anything on Hades. Because even with your sustain, people are going to build life steal. So people are going to build life steal. People are going to build anti-heal. So say they build anti-heal, so now your lifesteal's not OP. You don't have your ult for the massive protection buff. If you go in, you're very easy to kill. You better hope you're damaging them and killing them with that damage, because if not, they're going to turn it around on you. Even though Hades is busted in lane, that's another thing. I think people are going to... Some people are going to rate Hades really high just because of how OP he can be in solo lane and how much he's probably shit on you in solo lane. Trust me, I've been there too. But we can't rate him too highly for that. I just feel like he's more situational than a lot of the characters above him. So maybe I'm slightly underrating Hades here, but that's where I'm going to put him for now. Hebo, the character with 3 ults. The character who's known for doing a shit ton of damage, but he's not very safe. I basically just quantified Hebo. Late game, your ult's going to one-shot. Even your 1-3 combo, just one of those could completely destroy people. It's because his passive gives him a bunch of extra damage. He has low cooldowns. He just has high numbers. His 2's decent for mobility, but he's still kind of easier to kill. When you crash into people with your wave, if they Aegis it, and so they just negate all that ult damage, they can easily turn it around on you and kill you. So definitely safety's a big problem for Hebo. And I'm pretty sure Hebo's early game's also pretty bad. It's hard for him to hit the whole wave. He can't really hit the whole wave usually with either of these abilities. And he needs to scale. He has like low damage early game. So he definitely has a lot of weaknesses. But he can late game, he is a nuke. He is a nuke late game. But that's the thing, is that nukes can be Aegis, right? I think we're gonna have to look at, is there really that much reason to be playing Hebo out of other characters? You can play him in the jungle too, which is nice. But I just don't feel like there's much reason to ever be playing Hebo. I think I'm going to put Hebo right here for now. Maybe I'm slightly underrating him though. Could be possible. Heim's a character that I think is kind of underrated just because people don't want to take the time to play him. If you use the Bifrost correctly, it's one of the safest abilities in the entire game. His ult's obviously pretty good, even though it's single target. Your 2's decent. It has a knock-up. His 1 can counter stealth. You can see people and all that kinds of crazy shit. That's a decent ability. Your power gives you physical power per stack. When you gain vision of an enemy god, you get power. So decent passive. He's just a character that I mean, his passive's just decent. This is just decent. This is just decent. This is single target and can get beats. And then he's kind of hard to use correctly, especially on your 3. And so I think it's just those things bog him down, really. I think Hunter's one of those roles where it's a lot of just preference, whether or not you're going to think a character's better than another. So Hunters, for me, are like really hard to rank. As you can see, I'm going to put Heim in the A tier between Kern and Hachiman for now. Hel's one of those characters, you know, she's got supportive effects. She's got really good heals. But unlike Aphrodite, she also can do a metric booty ton of damage. This reduces protections, right? Yeah, so her 2 reduces protections, or you can cleanse CC, which both of those are extremely helpful. So she is kind of too close range, and she does get countered by anti-heal, but she also gets to the point where she has like 0 cooldown, and she just has good support effects, can do a lot of damage. I mean, I kind of feel like Hel's a character that's dependent on her numbers, because she has her weaknesses, but she has just as many strengths as she does have weaknesses. So it kind of depends on the meta and her numbers, just how good she's going to be. I think she's a decent character. Okay, so just based off of my other placements, I think I'm going to fit Hel in here. A tier between Cliodhna and Daji. Hera's a character that I feel like if she was as good as she is annoying, she'd be SS tier. But she's just a character that's annoying. I don't think she's actually very good. She doesn't have the most practical abilities. Argus isn't the most practical ult, especially if you don't land him down on somebody, but then even then, kind of like with the Caledonian Boar, Argus is kind of a dumbass. This is a mage ability that does no damage. It's literally just for self-kill, therefore it's only annoying. It's at best. This is a slow-moving ability, so it's decent to miss, but it has more range to make up for it. And it's a polymorph, which a polymorph's pretty strong. You can go up to 2 seconds. The thing is, this ability doesn't hit that hard. And then your 1, it's like not the most practical damaging ability. It's your most damaging ability, but it's just like the way that you use it is just so weird to me. So I feel like she's one of those characters where she'll just, unless her numbers get busted, I don't think she'll ever be like a super good character. She'll just be like decent or good. We're going to place Hera bottom of A tier. I would put her above Danza, but Danza's my boy. So she's going below Danza. Hercules hits like a motherfucking truck early game, and his Excavate always hits like a truck. His 3 makes him super hard to freaking kill. Big ass heals when you use it correctly. Big protection buff. So many Hercs 1v5ing. Oh, and then the combo. If you can hit this combo, which is not the most practical combo, people can purposely make the combo not work by walking up closer to you. They can beads it. They can CC immune it. You need movement speed in your build to really hit it reliably all the time against good players. But, you know, he's super tanky. Good CC combo. A lot of damage. Herc can't be trash, right? He's decent in lane. He just can't be trash. You can play him in support. You can play him in solo. Let's get it. So after much thought, I've decided I am putting Hercules in the A tier between Anhur and Discordia. And another thing that I've decided is, you know, the S tier is looking a little lonely. We actually have more people in the SS tier than the S tier. We're going to move Ganesha up, we're going to move Camazotz up, and we're going to move Amaterasu up into the S tier. Some sustain, some prots, some CCR on the passive. He's got a pretty good passive. Our boy Horus, the Fracture updraft combo, does a shit ton of damage, and it's good CC. The 25% slow on updraft, and then Fracture is like a stun that reduces protections. Brother, toots. Hey. Your 3 comes up way more often now. The 3, it's given decent protections for 3 seconds. It's a little bit of a heal. It's kind of your escape. It's only on a 13-second cooldown. That's pretty decent. Not the best ability in the world. And even your 1 and 2, they're close range. Good players kind of know how to deal with it a little bit, but Horus wins a lot of lanes. Obviously, you're playing him in support, but he actually is decent in solo too. I should say that. You can play him in solo. Now, the ult is pretty much a comms ult. If you're not commsing, this ult is going to be super inconsistent. It's all dependent on your teammates. It's hard to use correctly no matter what. It's probably best with a completely coordinated team, so I can't really say the ult's too good. Even though max potential, it's crazy. You can teleport your whole team anywhere you want to go. But we got to look at the practicality of things a little bit now, don't we? I'm going to put Horus top of A tier, mainly because I think in most ranks, like probably Platinum and lower, I think Horus is very easy to carry on from support, and you can play him in solo too. And then I do have to take into effect a little bit the max potential of that ult. That ult's technically crazy. Hou Yi's a hunter that I feel like just has no place. He has a trash passive, one of the worst passives in the game. Your Ricochet at max potential is an insane ability, but most of the time it's just a decent ability. I feel like this Mark of the Crow is just decent for damage. Dive Bomb's really good for dodging stuff. In the grand scheme of things, it's nowhere near OP. There's nothing super special about it to put him above the rest. And then your ult is decent. Big AoE. Can even be decent in team fights, not just lane. He's one of those characters where, like, I feel like he's pretty decent early game, and he can fight really well in the early game. There's just better hunters. Like, I feel like Onher is probably just a better version than Hou Yi. Yeah, I think Onher is just a better version than Hou Yi, so there's kind of no reason to play Hou Yi, right? So that's, like, a massive knock, huh? Alright, and because I think Hou Yi's just not really that guy, I don't think his kit's actually amazing. We're going to end up putting him in B+ tier between Ao Kuang and Hebo. Hun Batz is kind of busted. I think Hun Batz's only weakness is the early game. I think he's only decent early game when most assassins, a lot of assassins that are better than decent early game, they'll be able to run his fade early game. I mean, what could be bad about him? I mean, this is a good ability. Or at least a decent ability. Decent to good ability. Decent to good ability. Your passive is Hydra's Lament passive, which is nice. Big kicker with Hun Batz. And what really gives him a place in this game is that Fear No Evil is a top 5 ultimate in the game. It's one of the best team fight ultimates, and it's on an assassin, which is unique and awesome. And because the rest of his kit's decent to good, and his ult is OP, he's always going to be one of those characters that has a place in the game and is looked at as a good character. Again, weakness, early game, not the best. As someone who just highly values the way Hun Batz plays the game, I'm going to put him S tier between Camazotz and Amaterasu. Alright, just realizing that there is other characters that I forgot to rank with audio. I ranked them without audio like a freaking doofus. First character that I did that with was Ishtar. As you can see, I put her A tier between Hachiman and Heim. I just don't really get the hype with Ishtar. I feel like she's just kind of a middling hunter. I mean, her ult's good. Her 1 that gives her different autos and gives her really good clear is nice, but I think her 2 sucks and her dash is just alright. Pretty good passive, though. Second character that I ranked without audio, Ishel, A tier between Mulan and Lancelot. Again, like, it's just a middling character. Don't get the hype, but she does have good CC. And, like, none of her abilities are trash. It's just she's kind of unsafe, and I don't think she has anything going super well for her. Third character was Izanami. Put her B+ tier between Jing and Cabrakan. Izanami, amazing early game. The best clear of any hunter. I just feel like her abilities are actually pretty lackluster. I don't think her ult's very good. I don't think her dash is very good for actually escaping. Her wave clear is just a normal wave clear. She does have a really good stem. So besides her really good stem and the fact that her autos go through the wave, what's really great about Izanami, but at least there's a reason to pick her if you really need to just win lane and duo for free. So for Janice, I put Janice in the S tier between Hun Batz and Kukulkan. The whole thing with Janice is that Janice's 2 hits insanely hard. His 3's good. His 1 is good CC, and you can use it for really great mobility. His ult's obviously OP as hell. Sniper ult, we love sniper ults. And yes, a lot of people suck at Janice, but I wasn't going to put that too much into consideration. When you don't do that, he's definitely one of the best mages in the game, in my opinion. Jing Wei, I think Jing Wei is just the best of the super safe hunters because she's immune to, like, the best CC in the game, knockups. Yes, her early game is probably the worst out of all those. She has a really bad early game, really bad lane clear. But late game, her crits hit super hard, and I think her passive's really good, just being able to fly back to lane. Next up was Jormungandr, who we have in the B tier between Raki and Atlas. There's just no reason to play him. He can be decent in lane, but I think he kind of falls off late game. He's not good in support. And I don't think, like, yeah, he's immune to a lot of CCs, but you take extra damage when you get hit with the CC that you're immune to. Like, that completely makes up for it. That's completely balanced out, in my opinion. Kali, we put her A tier between Olorun and Nox. Late game hyper carry, she has an ult that lets her do damage while being immune to dying. Her passive fully heals her. She can't be trash. And the final person was Khepri. As you can see, Khepri is S tier. Amaterasu here. Thanatos behind him. Khepri's OP. I know this is a sneak peek at what's to come on the tier list. I don't care. Khepri's OP. His Sunball gives your teammates like 40% damage mitigation for like 5 seconds. And then it reduces the enemy's protections like the same amount. Being able to revive people, even though it can get countered by executes, being able to revive people and not in place, but teleported to you with the CC cleanse, with movement speed, is one of the most broken abilities in the game. And then his 1-3 combo is just great CC. His passive's even really good. People underestimate how much that shield is really helping. Right, I'm not even going to play games. I just ranked a few people while my mic was muted. So we'll go back. I'm not going to replace them. As you can see, King Arthur was the first person I ranked. He is A tier between Loki and Cliodhna. And I just think there's not a huge reason to play him. I think he's only decent in lane. I think he's only decent in team fight phase. And, like, yeah, you can build Bluestone on him. You can build Glad Shield on him. Rest tank. Do a shit ton of damage. But his abilities are, like, he has extra abilities for a reason, guys. You have to hit extra abilities for them to be as good as the characters that have less abilities. He's not just a busted character. And so you have that small weakness on him. That makes him more fun to play, though. And then his ult, I think if his ult's not charged, it's not good at all. And even when his ult's charged, it's not OP. So there's just no reason to put him any higher than that. The second character that we ranked was Kukulkan. I put Kukulkan in the S tier between Janus and Amaterasu. And a big part of that has to do with the buff to him. He's just immune to slows now. With his 2. He's just immune to slows. Most common CC in the game. You can't slow him. That's insane for Kukulkan survivability. I think he's... I mean, he literally gives you like 60 to 80% movement speed, so it might as well be a dash. I think Kukulkan's just as safe as anyone else at this point. That was a major weakness they took away for whatever reason. Because, I mean, your 1 goes super far away. You can out-damage so many people with Kukulkan 1. It does a ton of damage. You can do Polynomicon combos with it. Hitting your 1 gives you a free few ticks on your 3. Your 3 hits so hard late game. And then, another big reason why I had Kukulkan so big, and it's also a reason why I have Janus so big, I highly rate sniper ults. Kukulkan's is pretty wide. The potential of Kukulkan ult in a team fight is insane. I highly value that. Even if you only hit one person, you're still hitting them like an absolute truck at the very least. But because of Kukulkan ult potential, I have to rate him very highly. I think those are like... I think that's the best types of ults for mages to have. Like, they're not just fun. I actually think those ults are just straight up good. The next person we ranked was Kumbhakarna. We put him in the C tier between Aphrodite and Artio. I was saying how I'm not as big of a hater as everyone else is on Kumbhakarna. Don't really get why people hate on Kumbhakarna. I think it's because individually, all of his abilities aren't that good. You don't get his passive for like 75% of the game because half the time when it happens, you die anyways. So it basically did nothing. Did very little. And then it has a 120-second cooldown. But when it does go off, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice when it goes off. It's like, again, that mage starter where you revive yourself. It's pretty nice. Your 1's trash. It does decent damage, but it's trash. Your 2 is good when it goes off, but it takes fucking forever. It has the longest wind-up of all time. And it can get canceled. And then your 3, I think people don't highly rate Mezes, but I actually said that I think his 3 is just a straight up a good ability. It does more than just Mez. It has like attack speed slows and like actual movement speed slows on it too. His 3 straight up good. I think his ult is straight up good, even though it's single target and short range. I know a lot of people do that thing where they ult on Kumba and the person was like 1 step too far away. But, you know, the ult does a shit ton of damage. It knocks it knocks teammates up when they land. And I said I think Kumba's strength is just how his kit flows off of each other. Hitting the Mez, a lot of times you get the free 2 off, into the free ult, into the free 1. I just don't want to hate on Kumba. I don't want to hate on Kumba. The next person I ranked, as you can see, top of A+ tier, is Kuzenbo. Oh my god. Kuzenbo's OP, dude. Build a little bit of cooldown on Kuzenbo. Use your shell spikes at the right time. You can cycle your 1 and 3 instantly. And because of the way you're supposed to build Kuzenbo with a little bit of damage in there, you'll hit them with their Nene. You'll hit them with your Nene, do a little bit of damage. You'll push them. Maybe you'll push them into the wall or through a couple of minions. You'll do a shit ton of damage. You pop your 2. You do a little bit of return damage. And then you instantly get your 1 and 3 back. And now you've done a shit ton of damage once you add your ult in. Which, again, Kuzenbo's ult's just OP. Multi-knock-up. Super good for peel. And you're super tanky on Kuzenbo even when you do build some damage items. Because with your passive, you get damage mitigation. Kuzenbo's just a straight-up good character. Stop hating on the turtle. We ranked Lancelot next. As you can see, Lancelot is he was between Isha and Danza. I think he just doesn't really have a place. There's not a lot of reason to play him. Solo laners and junglers don't seem to rate him too highly, but I don't think they think he's bad. I just think he's one of those characters that's just simply decent and doesn't do anything special. We'll move past Lancelot now. I ranked Loki next. Loki is between Disco and King Arthur. I said I think late game, I don't think Loki has many weaknesses early game. I think he's good at farming. He's decent at split pushing. And I think late game, he just does a shit ton of damage, and invisibility is really strong against uncoordinated teams. He's one of those characters where he's kind of like Camazotz, where if he wants to kill somebody, he will kill them 99% of the time. He might have to trade. He's a triple-double type of character, but getting free trades like that is very valuable. The last person we ended up ranking, whenever my mic was muted, was Marticarus. You see him in the A tier between Haim and Kern. He's just been nerfed too much. His numbers aren't as big as they were, but his kit is straight up good in general. He has like a better Freya ult and everything. It's just that when his ult is down, he's actually really easy to kill, and he's an ability hunter. And don't let me forget about my man Bridget. I almost forgot about my man Bridget. SS tier. Between Cherno and Baba. I think they've nerfed her damage numbers, but I think her numbers are still just too busted. I think she has, you know, unbalanced damage. And then her kit all the way around is just good. She has a 1.2 second stun, which is good. Her 3, her dashing into people is OP, and I think her ult's a little bit OP too. Just a character with too high of numbers, and all of her abilities are basically great. Mai's a character, he fell off a little bit. His passive's kind of whatever. His 1, it's pretty decent. It's pretty decent. You'll get a lot of people killed with the 1. For appeal-wise, I don't think it does much. Your 2, big reason why Maui's just not looked at as a super good character is because your 2 is just not getting used by your teammates ever. Unless it's like high tier or a coordination. Your 3, it's pretty good ability. It's just not a great ability, right? I don't think it's great. At least until level 5. Level 5, 1.5 second stun, that's kind of great. But in your ult, a lot of people miss the ult. A lot of people only hit 1 or 2 people with ult. Sometimes you'll hit it, and it doesn't amount to much. But the ult has really high potential. The ult is a great ability. Let's see, where do we want to rank Maui? Okay, so I've decided I'm going to put Maui in the A tier between Horus and Baron. I also think I'm going to move... I think Chaac's going to go down 1 place because I think... And all these other people, because I think I'm going to move Honor in the A+ tier, because the more I think about it, there's just too much of a reason to play Honor. I think people are valuing their early game and not caring that much about the fall-off in the late game. I think Honor is just by far the best character at that, so it gives him a really strong spot among hunters. I need to stop hating on hunters. We're going to give Honor the top of A+ tier instead. That being said, Medusa's kind of a bad hunter. I don't know, she does a shit ton of damage. I kind of like building Medusa ability. I feel like there's like quite literally no reason to play her. Her ult usually doesn't work. Doesn't normally do anything. Your passive's pretty much whatever. Your dash, yeah, it does a lot of damage, but it's blockable, and there's just nothing too special about her 1 or 2. She's just straight up an underwhelming character. There's not much to say. This is literally just an underwhelming character. Hopefully my list is still making sense. I'm going to put Medusa at the bottom of B tier, and I'm going to move Artemis to the top of B tier. Artemis just beats too much ass, and there's quite literally zero reason to ever pick Medusa. There we go. Mercury's another late game hyper carry god. He can slap some shit up. His ult is a super good ult because it's basically semi-global. You can go from dual lane tower to dual lane tower with this ult. So that makes it, and it's CC. He's got good CC. I mean, this is good CC. This is good CC. He hits like a fucking truck, and he's an auto attacker that actually has some range with his made you look. I think his weaknesses is just the fact that 1, he's an auto attacker, and 2, you know, you have to get past early game on this character. I think Mercury does have a big place because out of all of the like auto attacking late game hyper carry junglers, I think he's the best one. I think we're gonna put we're gonna put Mercury at the bottom of A+ tier, but then we're actually gonna move Charon to the bottom, so he'll be the second bottom. I like that better. And people don't be using Merlin too much anymore, huh? I think it just has to do with the fact that he's a character who doesn't have a big mage ult. I think big mage ults are really nice and prioritized. It's the fact that my guy has a 24-second to 20-second cooldown on his flicker that doesn't even go super far away. He doesn't have the most practical abilities, like his fire stance isn't even super good a lot of the time, and all of his abilities have to combo. If you mess up the combo, you're losing out on a ton of damage. The damage on your ult isn't gonna get hit a lot because it's so low range. You have to be right on top of you. I think the big reasons why people like Merlin is just for the stance switch. There's times where you'll hit a big combo on your arcane stance, switch in your ice stance, and hit a big combo on your ice stance too, and in cases like that, the amount of damage you're outputting is insane in the late game, but he has a lot of flaws. Alright, so I've decided to put Merlin in the A tier between Cliodhna and Hel. Morgan Le Fay, this character is probably the most annoying character in the game, but that's also because she's pretty fucking good. I think she was the best mage in the solo lane mage meta. I think she's still good. Her ult, yes, it's not one big burst. You have to hit multiple ones. It can be kind of hard, but her ult, busted. Her 1, that fear, is busted. Her 2 is good. Her 1 is good. Her passive is good. Morgan Le Fay is good. Might not have the most practical mage abilities, the biggest AoEs, and all that, the highest numbers, but she also has pretty low cooldowns, if I remember. 11 seconds, 12 seconds, 13 seconds. Yeah, her cooldown's pretty low. I think Morgan Le Fay is just a great character. Even with nerfs to mage solos, you can probably still play Morgan Le Fay pretty decently. So we're going to have to give her points for solo as well. I think we're going to put Morgan Le Fay in the A+ tier between Kuzenbo and Ullr. Mulan, a character that beats ass early game. Really good laning phase. Even mid-game, as long as you don't get behind mid-game, she fucking destroys people. This 2 ability is insane. Really nice heal. Really good damage. Her pull's a really nice ability. She doesn't fall off as much with the buff. They made her things upgrade faster. Her ult's decent. I feel like whenever I play Mulan, she's like one of the warriors that dies the fastest. I can even build like as tanky as possible. She still just feels so easy to kill whenever I play her. And I still think she falls off a lot harder than some of the other warriors in the late game. You're not even going to always have the best early games, and so then you're just going to feel bad on Mulan the entire game. Or at least only decent. You're not going to feel great. Okay, I've decided I'm going to put Mulan in the A tier between Kali and Ixchel here. Oh, yeah. Another thing that I wanted to do is I'm actually going to be moving Achilles up to the bottom of SS tier. I think he deserves it. Bottom of SS tier. Let's go. Najidalila. I'm a fan of Ne Zha. I think Ne Zha is a great character. You can build crit on him. He goes hard with crit because of his 2. I think his 2 is a great ability. I think Sash is a great ability. I think Ring Toss is a great ability. What is bad about him? I think his ult's a great ability. Super good setup. Late game, your ult literally. Late game, Sash into somebody, maybe auto them once, and then fucking win Fire Whales. And yes, there's beads. His ult's one of the hardest things to beats all time. And you can literally just mind games people and wait after a Sash. And just, they'll probably fucking boosh beads every time. I mean, what is the downside to this character? I don't see one. I think this is just a really good character, right? Burst is so crazy late game. Ring Toss, so good for poking people and killing people when they're low. Literally don't give a shit. We're gonna put Ne Zha A+ tier between On Her and Morgan Le Fay, so near the top. Don't sleep on my girl Neith. I think Neith is actually really underrated in the mid lane, not the duo lane. And that's because, I mean, she gets attack speed from her 2, just like AMC gets free attack speed. And then her 1 hits like a truck. Like, she can hit like a truck, just like AMC. Her 1 and ult hit like a truck. Especially when you hit Weave. Weave is like such an OP ability. She's decent. She's safer than AMC, or she's at least just as safe as AMC is. And then the super special thing about Neith is she has a global auto damage ult. Yes, people can body block it. Yes, it can be Aegis because it's super slow and super telegraphed. But I think it's super helpful to be able to, you know, you don't even have to go over there. You can stay in your lane, keep farming, and still help your teammates get a kill or finish people off that are low. I highly, I just think that's really good. So let's see where we're gonna put Neith at. Baby. I think I'm gonna put Neith below Chiron. I just think Chiron's abilities are a little bit better most of the time. I'm just a Chiron lover, guys. I think y'all are sleeping on Chiron. I think Chiron's just a slightly better Neith, but not in general, because Neith does have that one reason to pick her over Chiron, which is that global. So I can see you putting Neith over Chiron as well, or even a spot higher, because that global is super important. I've heard some rumblings of Nemesis recently, but I haven't seen any of it. Apparently this character's coming back. I mean, if you look at her kit, how's she bad? I mean, her fucking Scales of Fate is OP. That power gain and power loss, OP. Double dash like Achilles, decent damage. 2, hits on people, 30% slow. 30% is a good slow. Retribution, it's not practical. It's kind of hard to use. But if you use it correctly, which, I mean, good Nemesis players, people that are better than me, they're going to use it correctly all the time. It's like Kuzenbo, it's pretty nice. And your ult, that's a huge reason to pick Nemesis. Nemesis can never be too low, as long as the rest of her kit is decent, and her ult is good and has its own specialty, which is, even if you're the tankiest tank, you are now a squishy. Basically what her ult does. But again, I haven't been seeing her go hard. I know there's been metas where Nim goes hard. I know she can be like a really good character right now, but I just don't see it. So let's see. I think I'll put Nim top of A tier, because on paper, her kit's just good. And her ult gives her so many brownie points, because that's such a reason to pick her. So it's like she's already decent, but now you have like a really good reason to pick her in certain scenarios. But then again, I just haven't been seeing her do crazy shit. Maybe I should put her lower. Maybe I should put her into like a less consistent spot. We'll put her between Herc and Discordia instead. So Nike is a character that I've seen and tried out myself, with the rumblings of her being a lot better. Build like this. She's pretty damn good in lane. She slams on people. She counters hunters. I mean, she has like the highest win rate in the game right now, so you have to give her tons of brownie points rather than the highest win in the game right now, even though I know some people probably won't. I will. Your passive's whatever. It helps your whole team, so there's that. Your 1, straight up good, even though it's channeled. Your 2 can be nasty in certain scenarios, but it does decent damage no matter what, even if you're just going to use it for damage. I mean, it has a decent range, dude. Your 3's good. It's a knock-up. Your ult can get countered, and that's probably Nike's biggest weakness, I think, is just that her ult, which is your most important ability, can be countered. There's so much anti-shield in the game now, but if they don't do that, it's really good, because it's a 40% slow and tons of damage. And even when they do that, I think it's still decent. I don't think when it gets countered, it's bad. It's just, if you're getting countered like every Nike ult in a game, you probably shouldn't have picked Nike. It's enough for that, but I don't think like you'll have 0 impact. You know what I'm saying? She's pretty good. She's pretty good. I think I'm going to play a little bit safe. I'm not going to rate Nike too highly, too fast, but yeah, Nike, bottom of A tier, or bottom of A+ tier, right below Charon. Nox is a character. She's trash in any role other than support, and even then in support, she's kind of inconsistent. You really don't care about Flame of the Night too much. You have to hit this combo, and it's not the easiest combo to hit, especially people are going to see that it's a Nox support, and so they're going to be purposely, like, hyper-dodging this shit and beadsing it. Your Shadow Step, you don't really care about, so you're really only caring about your combo, which, again, is not consistent, and then your ult. And your ult's hard to get good value out of, but you can get good support value out of it. It does decent damage, and it's able to reduce damage that people are able to deal. You hit it with somebody, or you hit it onto an enemy, so you hit your ult on an enemy, and it does... And they have their damage reduced by 30% for 5 seconds. That's really strong. It's just not actually practical. How many times do you hit that on, like, multiple people in a really important 5 seconds? It's not as much as you would think, but she's still decent. I've decided to put Nox in the A tier between Kali and Mulan. Okay, we're moving on to Nuwa. Nuwa's very impractical mage. How often is your 1 doing a shit ton of damage? So yeah, Nuwa's 1's kind of a bad ability. I mean, obviously it has use cases. It's not useless, but it's pretty bad, like, compared to a lot of other abilities. You have to hit the combo, and people, it's just like with Nox, when you have to hit the combo, maybe they'll destroy clay soldiers before you get to hit them with the shining metal. Maybe you only blow up one of the clay soldiers for whatever reason. They kind of go wherever the fuck they want. However, I will say that if you do hit the max combo on her, it's just like Nox. It has a shit ton of impact within the game. Your passive's decent, just decent. And then your ult, obviously great use case. You can finish people off wherever, as long as they don't have Aegis or a way to have damage immunity. Adds tons of damage in the team fight, so that does give her a big reason to be picked. I just think this is super inconsistent and, like, unpractical for like mage abilities. You know? I don't know. My B+ tier, I'm not the most proud of my B+ tier, because I kind of feel like Ares should be higher, and maybe Cabrakan, and maybe Hera, someone like Hera should maybe be lower, but, you know, it's not too bad. So we're just going to keep it. I just want to throw that out there. I'm going to put Nuwa B+ between Izanami and Apollo. There's obviously big use cases for Odin Cage. Odin Cage can go hard, even though it can get countered. So it can't go super hard. Good, as long as we want random shell. You have a big, meaty combo. You're super hard to kill. You can do... I mean, your passive's great. He has a great passive, which really helps him with his movement speed and his power. Your 3's decent. It's got a stun on it, 1.2 seconds. And I think a big part of Odin is just the survivability of Odin, because his leap's good. You can have really low cooldowns, 12 seconds. So that constant health shield just makes him impossible to deal with sometimes. I think Odin has some strengths. It's just his strengths aren't so high that you're going to want to pick him all the time. You're going to want to pick him whenever you're picking him for Ring of Spears, basically, which also has 100% anti-heal, right? That's nice. Because I don't feel like you're picking Odin all the time, I'm going to kind of put him in this tier that I have with, like, Ares and Cabrakan, where he's situational, but he's, like, also decent outside of that situation. We're going to put him between Ares, Cabrakan, B+ tier. Olorun's a character that I kind of feel like, yeah, the other parts of the kit are decent. I mean, he's a mage ADC that can crit. Far range on his 1. A little bit of sustain. Attack speed boost, 40%. Like, he's decent. But obviously, you know, you need mage ADCs to be in the meta for him to be higher. I don't think they're in the meta. So he's kind of just a big ult bot. But, like, his ult, even though it's so big, I don't see Olorun ults going off as much as I feel like they should. Like, Olorun ult on paper is, like, broken. Like, top 5, top 3 best ult. But it never feels like that now, does it? I've thought about it long and hard. I think I'm actually just going to put Olorun in the A tier. Right behind Freya. In front of Kali. My poor boy Osiris. I want Osiris to be good so bad, but apparently he's not. I feel like he would be a lane bully, but I think that was more of a back in the day kind of thing, and he's just not as much of a lane bully, and the buff, the sickle strike didn't help enough. No one cares that he's super tanky. His builds aren't doing enough damage. There's better 100% anti-heals. His ult is super low AoE. You're missing it a lot. It's not doing enough damage. I think he's super hard to kill, but he's not OP early enough the game. Like, man's just got issues, boys. Osiris just has issues nowadays. I'm going to show my belief in my boy Osiris, and I'm going to put him B tier between Gilgamesh and Artemis. I believe in him. I think he's actually a little bit underrated. Alright, internet's being dog shit right now. So, of course, I can still record. This screen was already up, so it's not gone. But Smite will not load, so we're just going to go forward past without the fucking, being able to look at the Smite game launcher thingy. Raw's heal is extremely good ability. Prot, decent heal. His 1 slaps, but it's not practical, even though it has far range. It's very short. Your 2 is not practical. It doesn't do a shit ton of damage, and they have to be right next to you. And then your ult, it's a snipe, but it's skinny. There's a lot of ways for Raw to be impractical. He might just be the more fun but worse version of Kukulkan. He does have the fact that, you know, the team-wide heal. Team-wide heal is makes him a lot more likable. I think I'm gonna put Raw right above Disco and behind Nemesis. And that's just because of impracticality of his abilities. His actual abilities are pretty fucking good. His 2's probably his weakest one. His passive's good. His abilities are pretty fucking good. It's just, they're hard to hit. Not super practical. Anti-heal exists. Gonna have to put him there. Get the show on the road, boy. Sobek. Pluck is super good. Getting your pluck beads is not super good. But I feel like your ult can bail you out of every time your pluck does that. He is kind of a pluck bot though, because I mean, your 2's just decent. Your 1 is good for anti-heal, decent damage, decent heal. He's just got nothing crazy besides the pluck, and the pluck is very skinny, requires follow-up, and can be beads, so it's not busted or anything. He can be good in solo too, so you have to give him points for being able to work in solo. Sobek, super hard to kill. Very difficult decision for me with Sobek. I'm just gonna end up putting Sobek in A tier between Horus and Maui. Sun Woosley, Sun Woobert, Saint Kong Free. Alright, so Wukong's one of those warriors who's like so safe because of his ult and his 3 that he doesn't need to build as much defense, so he can go into more offense, which you would think would be a great advantage. He's pretty decent in lane. His cudgel does extra damage to minions. His abilities are all decent. I mean, decent, or good, you know. Good passive. Gives him extra, can give him extra power when he's above a certain percent health. It's basically shift your shield, because below it, he gets more protections. But the thing with some Wukong is I just feel like he's not up there, you know? He's a little bit underwhelming, but only a little bit. There's definitely a reason to play him. It's when you want your warrior to play more like an assassin, but still have those warrior capabilities. But sometimes, especially if you somehow get behind on some Wukong, it can feel like you're not tanky enough, or you don't have enough power. Kind of how it felt with old Shift Your Shield. We're going to put some Wukong at the top of A tier. Next up, we've got Vamana. Vamana ult early game and mid game, maybe. Maybe mid game if you don't get behind, maybe get ahead. His ult is still kind of menacing. Yeah, but late game, I don't feel like his ult's doing it anymore. And he's just someone who's been very power crept, I feel like. Your passive is decent, but like this ability, all it does is damage. It's a good dash, but it's like, I mean, look, all it does is damage. Not even a slow on this. This at least has a slow and can hit twice, but his kit's too simple for him to really keep up with the newer gods in the game. I actually think he's kind of just an ult bot. When his ult bads, Vamana's trash. We're going to put Vamana... Is he down here? We'll put him down here. We're going to put Vamana top of F tier. Next up, we'll do Ymir. I'm a Ymir fan. I think Ice Wall's OP. I think his pass is pretty good. I think his freeze is OP. It's just not the most practical thing to get off. You have to get really close. It has a animation delay, so it's very dodgeable. People can get on the side of your cone and dodge it that way. Ult's not the best. Your 2's pretty simple. I mean, it's decent damage and a 35% slow for 4 seconds. That's powerful, but it also has an animation delay. It doesn't actually get that much value a lot of times. And because Ymir doesn't have a dash or any of that stuff, he's one of the easier guardians to lock down and kill. And it takes time for the best part of your kit, being your 1 and your 3, to build up, because you need to level them up to get the lifetimes up and the duration's up. I don't want to hate on Ymir. I think he's decent, but he's not one of the best right now. Ymir's definitely got to be slept on a little bit though, right? Definitely got to be slept on a little bit though, right? I'm going to put Ymir B tier between Agni and Chronos. We're going to go ahead and do Zeus next. Obviously Zeus, he has the movement speed on his shield, but it's only when you throw your shield down, so it's not that practical. He's very easy to kill, but he makes up for it in damage. Zeus does make up for it in damage. It's just that combination of like damage to safety, even if he is making up for it, isn't really worth it. The Lightning Storm buff to his ult's nice, but it's not enough. There's nothing too special about him, so even though he is making up with it with damage, being that unsafe just ain't the play. I don't care if your attacks can bounce around and they're really good. You know, it's just, dude's too unsafe, I feel like. He's probably better in low tier, and the higher and higher you get, the worse and worse Zeus gets as a character. Zeus does do a metric spooky ton of damage, so we'll put him bottom of B tier for now. Right, we're looking at Thor. Thor has a hard to detect global, which gives him extra damage, so 1.5 second stun, super far range, and it just combos so well with this kit. Thor's combo flows together so well, you know, ult into Tectonic Rift, Mahalner's Attune It, Berserker's Barrage, or you can just do Tectonic Rift and then Mahalner's Attune It, and you can just, and the Tectonic Rift does damage now, right? Which was pretty unnecessary. It's a 1.6 second stun, and it's a long wall. It's like it's like Ymir wall, bro. He does good damage. He's pretty freaking safe. His team fight presence is awesome. I think Thor is one of the best assassins in the game. I'm actually gonna put Thor at the top of S tier. We'll go over Xbalanque. I don't like this character. I think his ult's even overrated. People like to say this ult's great. I think this ult's just normally good. Who cares about this ability? Who cares about this ability? Branching Bola is like one of the worst like auto attack buffs in the game. I feel like it makes you want to build Transcendence, but you can't build Transcendence. His passive's just decent. I don't like Xbalanque. I mean, like maybe on paper he doesn't sound terrible, but in practice this character doesn't feel very good at all. We're gonna put Xbalanque in the B tier, right above Medusa. Okay, we got Vulcan. He does have a big sniper role. You can also choose to do it, you know, close range, kind of like Janus, and he'll do a lot worse damage. But I think Earthshaker up close still does a decent amount of damage. It's a really big AoE. I still think it's the worst version of a sniper role. It does seem to be the hardest to get good value out of, but it is a sniper role nonetheless. He's got a pretty good passive. He's also pretty self-healy with the knock up into the backfire combo. His Inferno Cannon's it's not bad, but I don't think this is the greatest ability. You'd probably just rather have something else. So to have this and to have like the worst version of a sniper role, and also he's pretty like close range. Like backfire's close range as fuck. It's pretty hard to get the back range or the backfire off, and that does do more damage than your meatball, which is easier to hit. So it's just not the best mix of things. I still think Vulcan's pretty good. He has low cooldowns too. 6 seconds on backfire, 10 seconds on this. Pretty decent. We're gonna put Vulcan in the A tier between Nox and Mulan, mostly because I just think there's not too much reason to be playing Vulcan right now. He doesn't fit into his own little slot. So Poseidon's been getting played a decent amount recently, especially in the solo lane, which I don't really understand that. He's kind of an ult bot, you know, Whirlpool ult. Super great combo, unless they have any of their fucking relics, and then in that case, whoop-de-frickin-do. Your 2, I feel like your 2 is better than you would think, because he's not really an auto-attack character. People don't really build him auto-attack, but it's still decent. It gives you the 20% movement speed. You also get movement speed from changing tides, and usually people build movement speed on Poseidon. That's like his biggest, or one of his biggest upsides, besides the giant Kraken Whirlpool combo, is that this dude is impossible to fucking hit. And so it makes your slow-moving Tidal Surge easier to hit because you can actually afford to run up on people and hit them with the 1. It does a ton of damage. But still, I don't think his 1 or 2 are the best or the most practical. His Whirlpool is also just not OP, and his Kraken gets Aegis. So the movement speed thing's not going to make him crazy, in my opinion. I definitely view Poseidon as a somewhat overrated mage. I'm going to put Poseidon A tier between Loki and King Arthur, though, because of the Kraken and the Whirlpool Cripple. I do think there's at least decent reasons to play him, and you can also play him in jungle, so he has that too. Next up, we got Tyr. You can play him in support. You can play him in the solo lane. I think he's actually pretty good in both. Your 2 heals crazy. His fearless knockup combo is decent. Like, his abilities are decent. They're just kind of gimmicky. They're not the most practical. You have to go blink on him. His ult's still not amazing. He's just one of those characters that's slightly power crept, I feel like. And he's just kind of gimmicky. Like, people know when you're picking Tyr, you're probably going to be building some movement speed, and they're going to see it from a mile away when you try to fearless combo them, and it's going to make it harder to get your character to work. That being said, what this character tries to do, you'll get it to work somewhat consistently if you're good at the character, and you'll get decent impact out of it. I'm going to end up putting Tyr in the A tier, and I'm putting him between Cernunnos and Chiron. I think with the warrior buffs and all that, he's probably going to be pretty decent right now. Zhongqueezli. It's just Zhongqueez's kind of one of those characters where you want to play him in the solo, but he's not super good in the solo, so you want to play him in mid. He's not super good in mid. I think his passive's crazy. Being able to have that much protections for free on a mage is insane, and it works wonders for him because he is a close range mage, which is normally a big liability, but on a tanky character like him, with the type of ult that he has, it's not that big of a liability. Now, his ult is AoE around him, can do a lot of damage if they stay in it for a long time, but usually people just run away, so your ult doesn't actually get as much value as you would want it. You do have that this 2-second stun that you can try to keep them in there, and like all these abilities do decent damage. But again, he just has the problem of being close range, doesn't really have a place. His ult's not actually that good. A lot of times you do kind of have to go blink on him, even in mid lane, because he's so close range. It's just close range mages aren't really that king, and he's just not good enough in solo right now. I'm going to put Zhongqueez in the B+ tier between Awilix and Atlas, because I think there's zero reason to play him, but if you do play him, you can definitely find decent success still. Used to kind of hate on Thanatos and think he was more of a pub stompy god. He's still definitely a pub stompy god, but I do think, you know, we saw Sign Up Worlds last year. This character is pretty just fucking nuts. This character is actually just good. The life steals a little bit overbearing. The cooldown reduction on his kit is a little bit overbearing. Death Sight's one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game. Having a global execute where you're immune to damage, obviously, is crazy. And he has a silence. I mean, his kit's just too good. He is kind of an all-in triple-double trade character, but trade characters are still decent, and he might be the best of the trade characters. I'm going to be kind of nice to Thanatos because of his carry potential, especially in low-tier lobbies. I'm going to put Thanatos at the bottom of S tier. Scylla's a character that I think is actually decently better than it seems. It's just that I think most people suck penis at Scylla, and they don't know how to get around the fact that she has a bad early game, because she does. But late game, the freaking Sikkim, which can hit 3 people, by the way, at max rank, and to Crush, which is 15% magical protection reduced. Crazy. Her abilities are actually crazy. Even her getaway is good. And her ult is one of the hardest hitting abilities in the game. And if you get a kill, it resets. It's just the super, super, super way better version of Charybdis ult. Like, on paper, she sounds amazing. It's just, I think people suck with her. They miss a lot of her Sikkims and a lot of her ults. And they just are kind of like a sitting duck in their ult. You can get blown up in your ult. And it's just the bad early game. I'm still going to end up putting Scylla in the A tier between Freya and Olorun. Next up, we have Ullr. I think Ullr is commonly thought of as the best ability hunter right now. Him or Marticarus, I guess. I don't know if I completely agree, but what I've seen from Ullr mains, what I've seen of Ullr's max potential, this god is crazy. His combos are crazy. He can do 1,000,000 damage. He's pretty safe. There's just nothing bad about him. He's kind of a quintessential ability hunter. Only downside, I guess he doesn't have a big ult to make super big plays with every 60 seconds, 90 seconds or whatever. But yeah, the only downside really is that he is an ability hunter. I'm going to end up slotting Ullr in the A tier between Daji and Bacchus. All right, I'm a Rama fanboy. I think Rama's great. Rama's ultimate is one of the best hunter teamfight ultimates because it's a semi-global. It's really good for finishing people off. It's good for safety when you're getting dove in a teamfight. I mean, it's good for stealing the gold fury from people, which happens like all the fucking time. He's kind of a quintessential hunter. Kind of like Chernobog. I mean, his abilities, they're nothing crazy, but they just make your auto slap and they make you attack fast, and that's what you want from a hunter. And so when you give a hunter like that, this type of ult, which is pretty unique, gives him a spot. Also, the fact that he can shoot through walls gives him a spot. I think that makes Rama one of the better hunters in the game. I'm actually going to put Rama in the A+ tier between Kuzenbo and Morgan Le Fay. Don't see much of Serket from what I know of. I've heard she's the best fucking character in the game. I've heard she's the worst. I think she's kind of the worst. Ever since they changed her passive and the way that she works, where you can't build her tanky and still do 1,000,000 damage, and they've killed her in support. She's trash in support now, in my opinion. She does have a good anti-heal ult. She's super safe. She has 2 really good dashes, and she has like a taunt thing. I think it's called a madness for 1.2 seconds. So there's definitely upsides to her. I just think like it doesn't translate very well at all. She's too single targety, like her ult single targety. All these abilities seem very single targety to me, and I never feel like I do enough damage unless I build crit on her, which is kind of cringe. I don't know. She's just one of those characters where, I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. She just doesn't feel good to play, even though on paper she seems like she should be decent at least. Based off of the fact that I never see this fucking character, I'm going to put her in the B tier between Anubis and Almuz and Cobb. Alright, Sylvanus, he's just one of those guardians. He suffers from the fact that he doesn't have any movement, and the fact that Nature's Grasp is just a way harder to hit version of Mulan's pull, which kind of sucks for him. But his ult is great. His passive's super great. Your cooldowns are on 0. Your 2 is amazing, and your 1's really good too. And his early game's really good. So what is he suffering from? A worse version of Mulan's ability as his 3, and the fact that he's easier to kill. And that's enough for you to not actually see Sylvanus get played a shit ton. But at the same time, that's also not that bad at the same time. So with a tier list like mine, you might be seeing Sylvanus get ranked a little bit higher. Let's see where we're going to put him. I'm going to put Sylvanus in the A tier, which is probably surprising. Guardian bias. Between Scylla and Olorun. I think he's a really good Peel Mage. I just think he's the worst version of a really good Peel Mage. Mage, I meant to say Guardian. Lol. Alright, so next up we have Ratatoskr. Ratatoskr is probably just like a worse version of Thor. I think he might have a better early game than Thor, but like a worse late game than Thor. Flurry is nice because it reduces protections. Dart's like a whatever. It's just a whatever ability. Your Acorns are kind of... They're not OP, they're just decent. Acorn Blast is like a decent ability. Your bread and butter is Through the Cosmos, but is Through the Cosmos really better than what Thor has? I mean, it does have a knockup, so it's kind of even. I just like, if you compare Rat to Thor, I think he's just the worser version of Thor, and the only upside to Rat is that he's funnier, and maybe he has a slightly better early game. I'm going to not hurt on Rat too much for not super having a place. I mean, you can play him in solo too, just like Thor. I mean, he's a lot like Thor. Is that a good comparison? Y'all agree with that? Rat's kind of just worse Thor. Anyways, bottom of A tier. I think for a very long time, I've been like a lot higher on this god, Ravana, than most other people. I mean, how do you lose with this? I mean, just read what his ultimate does. How do you lose a 1v1 after that? 2, he has a better version of Chang'e's ability because his gives him damage as well. Better version of Chang'e's ability. Your 3's pretty good, and your 1's pretty good. And Chain of Blows is pretty fucking good too, boys. I mean, you can play him in solo too still, probably. I think Ravana's just he's just a really safe character. I think he's like the quintessential, like, if you're wanting to learn jungle and get good at jungle, he's like a noob character to play, and you'll do good pretty early on. And once you get good at jungle, you could even do great on him. All right, I think I'm gonna put Robin in the A tier between Tyr and Cernunnos. What are you really playing Jing Chan for? He does have like an Achilles-like ability, which is nice. His passive gives him shit tons of HP 5, which is decent. Your 2's just decent CC, and you have like one of the worser versions of a big CC ult, kind of like Ares, like a worse Ares ult type of ultimate. But that's obviously still decent. I think his big selling point and the reason to play this character is that he highly counters auto attackers. You can get 50% damage reduction from basic attack on your 1. Your 1 at max level, basic attacks do 50% less damage for 4 seconds, which is crazy. It's just, I think this game and other characters, there's a bountiful amount of ways to counter hunters and basic attackers already that you would think that would make him necessary against like high auto attacking comps, but it really doesn't. It really doesn't. And because the rest of his kit's a little underwhelming, not too good for Jing Chan there. We're gonna put Jing Chan in the B+ tier between Izanami and Nuwa. Does Sol have the best early game from the ADC side of things coming out of the duo lane? Potentially. You can take towers super fast on Sol. She has a really good passive. Her 3 some of the best escape ever. Her 2 is great. The amount of times I feel like I shouldn't be getting hit by a Stellar Burst, and then I do, is a lot. And there's people that make her ult feel good. I think her ult's just decent in the grand scheme of things. Your 1's just a decent ability as well. I mean, it generates heat, which is really nice. I guess her 1's pretty freaking good too. She's a really good character. I just think she falls off late game. And she's just one of those characters where there's just a lot of better options. There's not too much to say bad about her. She's like a noob character. I think in lower tier lobbies, she's a lot better. We're going to put Sol in the A tier between Scylla and Sylvanus. This character's falling off hard outside of the solo lane. I don't actually think he's as good as I don't think he's actually as good of a mid laner as people think. I don't think his 3 is a good 3. I think his 3 is kind of bad. I think his ult makes him a sitting duck sometimes, although it can be pretty good. It actually is harder to hit than you would think. Those things travel pretty slow. I see a lot of people miss them. And then your 1-2 combo is just not OP whatsoever at all. So what was really the bread and butter on Raijin was the fact that charged tempo worked so well with him in the solo lane, and now that it's not a thing anymore, I think he's going to fall off really hard. We're not going to see much Raijin anymore. I'm going to sort of hedge my bets, though, and I'll put Raijin in the A tier between Freya and Scylla. Okay, sadly for the ADC mains, Scotty is another pretty trash character. Her little Kaldir gimmick is just not good enough. It's kind of confusing to use for some people. Takes a lot of time to get good at, and it's only for, like, decent impact. Her 1's just pretty fucking basic. I mean, her 1 at max rank is a 40% slow, which is nice. Doesn't have the most range. Her 3 is not the best ability anymore. She's kind of easy to kill because you have to wait till max rank to get this thing to 40% movement speed to where it's actually pretty damn good. And then you have someone like Kukulkan who gets way more than that earlier on. It's only 15% slow to enemies. And I feel like this ult just kind of sucks. I feel like her ult sucks. So yeah, Scotty's a bad hunter. Because she's also ability hunter, which really sucks for her, that she's the worst of the ability hunters. So considering all the other choices you had for ability hunters, we're going to put Scotty in the F tier. We'll put her in the F tier between Charybdis and Vamana. All right, I personally think Susano is kind of a G. He's just the better version of Serket, kind of. He's super mobile as an assassin, but I feel like he does way more damage than Serket, and he has the ability to hit way more people, like do a lot more in a team fight. He has one of the best team fight ults. Obviously, Hun Batz is better, but his is up there for an assassin. The Typhoon is like such a big boon for his character. He's really good with auto cancels, decent passive. Dude just does too much damage for having such a good ult in team fights, and the amount of mobility and safety that he has. It's as simple as that. We'll put Susano in the A+ tier between Morgan Le Fay and Rama. Terra's a character I don't feel is getting enough love right now. Her ult's super good. If you don't know what Terra's ult does, I'm not gonna fucking tell you. However, read this right here. It's fucking insane. Obviously, you know her CC combos. She's got a root that easily combos into a stun. She actually does a lot of damage too. She has slows on her autos. She has knock-up immunity in her kit. She's just one of those characters where, like, what is really wrong with this character? Absolutely nothing. She even has heals. It's just that other characters are better. But I definitely think she's underrated right now. Because of the crazy teamfight ultimate, I'm actually going to put her A+ tier between Geb and Cuchulainn. Got her boy Thoth up next. Super far range, which is basically Thoth's gimmick, is his super far range. It's a super good gimmick to have on a mage. He's not super bursty besides his ult, but your ult, you have to supercharge it for a long time, and you're not CC immune into it. So it's kind of not bursty when you think about it because of the long charge time, and he screams. Everybody knows it's coming. But it is a sniper ult, so it's still a really good ability. There's nothing to hate on that. His dash is pretty good, although it does get countered by Fenrir, which kind of sucks. I mean, this ability's on a 5-second cooldown, so you build it any cooldown, it's basically on a 0-second cooldown. He gets free flat pin, which is a great passive. This one, you would think, like, at the start when you're using this one feels like it's not going to do much damage, but by the end of the game, hitting just 2 of these ones actually does so much damage that, yeah, maybe he does have a slight lack of damage to make up for the fact that his range is crazy, but they didn't balance it well enough. I think Thoth is just kind of an overwhelming character. He's a really good mage. Okay, I'm trying to rank these snipers well. I think I'm going to go with Thoth in the S tier, and I'm going to say that I think Janus is a little bit better than Kukulkan, and Kukulkan's a little bit better than Thoth. Is what I'm going to go with for here. So the Morgan has one of the best ults in the game, which is that she can copy any other ult and also get the other kit too. So she can go in, use her kit, change into the best possible thing she can, use that kit and that ult. So she's always going to be at least an A tier character, unless her numbers are just underpowered. But the rest of her kit's decent too. I mean, Confusion's alright. But this combo late game, the Dark Omen Deadly Aspects combo, whatever passive. But this combo does a fuckload with like Polynomicon late game. So it's not even like her actual kit sucks either. So she's actually a pretty good character, I would say. A character this versatile has to be in the A+ tier in my mind. We're going to put Morgan in the A+ tier between Susano and Rama. I've like heard good things about Pele recently, but I haven't been seeing her get played at all. Like literally, I haven't seen people play this character at all. Her movement speed on her, is it her 2? No, it's her 3. Here, her 3, right? Movement speed 30%. Nutty. Good sustain. She has a knock-up. Great damage. Her ult is crazy, but, you know, anti-heal exists. She does have to all in. She doesn't technically have a dash of any sort. So I don't feel like I don't know how to feel about Pele, really. I'm going to put her around mid-tier, I think. Because shits remain to be seen for Pele, I'm just going to put her A tier between King Arthur and Cliodhna. Set, I think before this recent patch where they nerfed Set's damage, he was pretty goated. He's probably decent now still. On paper, his kit's just sick. I don't even want to explain it. I mean, if you don't know what Set's ult does, read what Set's ult does. It's fucking nutty. Get attack speed from Relentless. I think you have, like, a certain amount of stacks you can get on this. But then when your ult's active, there's, like, no stack max. You can just keep going on forever. Get infinite attack speed. But I think his damage is not enough right now. And it takes him a while to get online. I don't think he's going to see any play, even though he's probably still decent. I'm actually going to be a little bit mean to Set, and I'm putting Set in the A tier right here between Freya and Raijin. I realize that's probably that could potentially be a little bit low, but I'm thinking he might actually be around. All right, I'm a Persephone hater. I think her kit sucks. I just straight up think that like all 3 of these abilities suck. Besides your ult, I think her ult's great, and that keeps her semi-relevant, but I do think this character needs a buff. Nobody plays her, and again, I really do think that's just because this character's kit's underwhelming. Personally, I'm putting Persephone in the C tier between Aphrodite and Kumbhakarna. Alright, the sky's the limit with Yemoja. Obviously, one of the hardest characters, probably the hardest character in the game to learn, but once you learn her, she's super good. Her ult has a really long cooldown, that's like the only weakness, but her ult's a really good ability. This 3 is an OP ability, and of course she has Omi, which is just a way better version of mana. She can spam abilities, and all of her abilities are good. I mean, this ability is really great. This is one of the ones you need to learn, though. It's kind of hard to use at first. Her 1... when you're able to spam it is OP, and because you are able to spam it, her 1's OP. Her 2, I think her 2's been nerfed so much. Her 2 used to be the best part of her kit. I think it might be the worst part of her kit now, but it's still good. It's just not broken anymore. But yeah, just an amazing character with Yemoja here. Been nerfed 800 times. I'm going to put Yemoja S tier between Thor and Ganesha. I think Tsukuyomi's kit is kind of weird. It doesn't feel super assassin-y. It is a cool kit, but I don't know. It's definitely underwhelming. It's not doing enough for the lack of safety you have. Like, they gave this man no safety as an assassin, and he's not doing extra damage to make up for it or anything. His ult isn't even very good, and there's no reason to play him. He's pretty bad. I'm going to be a little bit mean to Tsukuyomi, mostly because I just straight up think there's zero reason to pick him. I don't think his flex in the solo is that good. Yeah. Between Artio and Chang'e in the C tier for Tsukuyomi. Might be a little bit mean. Tiamat's a weird character. I think they definitely nerfed her damage by a lot, and I think it's because she has, like, variety in her ult. She has, like, 3 different ults. One of them is the Serpents that move down lane, which can act as a really good, like, extra buff to your wave. Supportive type of effect. You know, macro type of effect. And then they gave her damage mitigation in her stances and shit, which I don't think, like, she is annoyingly hard to kill, but she just does not do enough damage. I think last time she was meta was because you, like, double stacked with Book of Thoth and that rune or that tablet or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's just, they need an OP mage build. So that's why I think she was used back then, is because with that mage build, mages were just doing too much damage. And now that mages are doing a balanced amount of damage, Tiamat, whose numbers just aren't as big, kind of the King Arthur of mages, is suffering a little bit. I'll put Tiamat in the A tier between Danza and Hera, because when I think about it, I'd rather have a Tiamat than a Hera, and that's how I decided that one. Shiva's a character that you're not seeing a lot right now. He's probably a little bit underrated. He has like 2 knockups in his kit. He does decent damage. He has a couple of supportive effects. You can actually play Shiva in solo and support. He might even be better in support, to be honest. I just don't think his ult's that good. And I guess his kit's a little bit underwhelming. It's just that sometimes, like, you play him in support, so you're getting those supportive effects. You can reduce the cooldowns, and this is a character where, like, you'll have, like, 0 cooldowns. And so at a certain point, he starts to feel pretty decent, pretty good. But I think he's definitely got to be... Yeah, there's quite literally, like, no reason to play Shiva, and he's slightly underwhelming. We're going to put Shiva in B tier between Agni and Yami. Okay, so here's Dao Song. Dao Song does a shit ton of damage. I think Dao Song's good in the mid lane. His ult, once you get good at it, his ult can be crazy. I think he has a really good team fight mage ult. It's just hard to use. I think he's a little bit boring. People don't like his face, I think. But he's actually underrated. He does so much. I think Yu Huang's probably one of the better mages in the game. But because Dao Song is kind of hard to play, we'll put Dao Song at the bottom of A+. Under our boy Surtur, when you're building like Arc Druid Spear, you're using the correct Surtur build and you get your 1 stacks really high. His 1's crazy good. I think his 3's good. I think his 2's great. And I think his ult is great. And I think it's just a good meta for Surtur. Like, super safe character that also just beats ass and is really tanky, but also does a lot of damage. Like, he's a quintessential warrior, I feel like, nowadays. Because of the way Surtur fits in, you know, I'll put Surtur S tier. I was going to put him top of S tier. I think there's an argument for it just because of the way he fits in among the other solo laners within the game. But we'll put him in S tier between Yamoja and Ganesh instead. So Bake Kujira, he feels OP as almighty fuck in support or solo. He wins like every solo lane. He wins like every duo lane. His abilities are great. This Sonic Wave is super OP. He's really good with Glad Shield. His ult's good too. I think his only weakness is that he doesn't have any CC immunity in his kit. He can sometimes actually be easier to kill. I just think he wins a lot of 1v1s. He wins a lot of trades. So you're going to need at least one other person to help you out. He's definitely a buffed up character right now. However, will his impact actually be SS tier level? I slightly question that. And because I slightly question whether or not he's going to be an SS level character, Bake Kujira is going to be top. Bake Kujira is going to be top of S. Okay, and right here, I'll give you all a final look at the tier list. Here's every single character that's on the tier list all at once. Go ahead and get your looksy doozies. And thank you guys for watching this video. Please leave a like and comment if you enjoyed. Tell me what I should do next. I love you guys.